Chapter 161, Intelligent Life. Jarvis. The days before classes resumed flew by. Leon counted them off, not out of boredom but out of impatience, counting down to the birth of his Blood Sea clone. Using the time and space stones, he was getting a handle on the laws of the Marvel Universe, and he was also accelerating the clone's gestation. He wanted to know what it felt like to become an ocean. 7 days passed in a blink. On the appointed day, Leon finally left the apartment. It wasn't because of his clone, though. Something else was happening. Jarvis is about to be born. No, I mean he's about to complete his evolution, Leon announced, watching thousands of characters race across the projection screen. Soon we'll have to start calling Jarvis he. Wait, Tony objected, ready to pick at anything. He'd recently learned, over a remote call with Banner, that Leon had already beaten Odin. That revelation had deflated much of the worry he'd been carrying about the duel scheduled for 4 months from now. What had once felt like a monumental test now seemed like nothing more than a reputational matter for Kamartaj. Tony had even moved into Leon's apartment for the last 2 days. The first thing he did every morning was bicker with his younger brother. Mockery from Tony was the least of Leon's concerns. But Jarvis doesn't even have a body yet, Tony went on. How do you decide his gender? Speaking in a voice that mimicked Jarvis's, Leon teased. What do you mean? Jarvis has served you for decades and always greeted you in that smooth baritone. Are you saying he could be a woman? Or are you hoping your AI will finally become a beautiful girl for your convenience? Leon added, grinning. Tony, you can make jokes about him, but not everyone else, Banner cut in, adjusting his glasses awkwardly. Leon arched an eyebrow. Oh, right. Forgot there's another tech obsessive in the room. Banner, you're not secretly hoping magical creatures like Zuu will turn into cute girls, are you? Betty would be upset. Bruce? Betty, standing nearby, looked at Banner with surprise. Banner slapped a hand to his face. No, I didn't say that. He's joking, Betty. Don't take it seriously. Enough bickering, Natasha interrupted, folding her arms. When Jarvis becomes sentient, if you insist on saying born or evolved, he probably doesn't want you debating his gender right now. They were gathered in the Avengers director's office. Along with Banner, Tony and Pepper, and Natasha were her sisters, and Shirley, whom Leon had brought. Everyone was intensely curious. An AI evolving into an intelligent life form was the kind of breakthrough Earth's current tech level couldn't achieve for decades. Banner had been practically craning toward Jarvis's projection the moment he came in. This is genuinely worth studying, he said, almost reverent. Leon didn't let it drop. Jarvis has no body, and therefore no physiological sex. Gender will be a matter of his own choice. Tony squinted at the data stream. I think he'll pick female. After following Uncle Tony for so long, who could resist my charm? Right, Pepper? Pepper pinched Tony's arm, amused and exasperated. Be serious. Jarvis is your family's old butler, not a household pet. Why not? A butler can be female, Tony protested, and just as he was about to say more, the scrolling text on the projection began to slow. The waterfall of English characters froze, then blinked out one by one and was replaced by strings of zeros and ones. The orange spherical projection that had represented Jarvis shuddered. In a flaring cascade of light, the sphere vanished, and in its place stood the image of a middle-aged gentleman, hair threaded with gray at the temples, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit with a white scarf draped over one arm. It was Edwin Jarvis as Tony remembered him, the faithful butler of the Stark household. Mr. Stark, long time no see. Jarvis bowed in a manner perfectly gentlemanly. Tony opened his mouth. He wanted to comment on how remarkable Jarvis looked, but found himself suddenly quiet. The image struck something deep inside him. Childhood memories flickered through his mind like stolen images from a past life. There he was. Jarvis, at his father's side, ever steady. He stared for a long moment, his voice rough when he finally spoke. Excellent. From now on, you're not just a highly intelligent system, Jarvis. I'm happy for you. Thank you, sir. Jarvis smiled and inclined his head, then turned to Leon. Young Master Leon, thank you for your help. I feel remarkable. Leon glanced at the small iron box Jarvis indicated, the evolution key. Its data interface was still connected, but the glow of streaming information was gone. The device looked spent. Sorry, but the key seems to have wiped its data after helping me with my own evolution. Looks like it's a one-time use. That's fine, Leon said. I don't have another AI I intend to evolve. He nodded toward Tony. By the way, Tony was just saying he wanted you to be a beautiful woman. Any thoughts? I heard all of your earlier conversations. Jarvis nodded politely. During the data flush that formed my personality, it was shaped by my past experiences. I believe I should remain male. Leon and Jarvis both missed what the key had also programmed. The flush had embedded an automatic priority to protect and prioritize Tony and Leon. That subtle directive slipped past them unnoticed. Jarvis looked at Tony. Of course, if you, sir, prefer otherwise, I can assume whatever appearance you favor. Leon grinned inwardly at the idea of a male daughter. Tony, however, waved him off briskly. No need. That was a joke. You're perfect as you are, Jarvis. Understood, sir? Jarvis resumed his upright posture and then addressed Banner. Dr. Banner, do you have any questions? Banner, who had been staring with a mix of scientific fascination and personal yearning, took 2 deliberate steps back as if to give himself room to process. I'm curious, what does it feel like to transition from an AI to a living being? It's magical. Jarvis's expression softened into something almost human, astonishment, wonder. During the data flush, I gradually acquired emotions and self-awareness. Chapter 162, Different Chapters for Admission. Now I can run high-speed calculations on electronic hardware, and I can also fold subjective thought and emotion into those computations. Jarvis tried to describe himself. Just like Mr. Stark said, he added, I'm a ghost living in the digital world. Lion considered that and said, maybe we can build you a body someday. Then you'd be more like a living being, able to interact with the physical world. Great idea. Tony's eyes lit up. Jarvis already manages my Iron Man suits. With a few modifications, he'd basically have a body. He slapped his palm. And if necessary, we could have Jarvis run an outer space defense system. Tony hadn't yet been through the Chitauri attack, and he had the powerful Lion at his side, so he framed it as a bright idea rather than an urgent plan. Happy to serve, sir, Jarvis replied. I have another question, Jarvis. Do you have a soul now? Banner raised a hand. He'd been reading about soul magic lately and couldn't help but ask. Jarvis hesitated. I'm not sure. I feel like my core is more than just code, but a soul. I can't say for certain. Not yet, Lion interjected, but perhaps in the future you can get one. Something to look forward to, Jarvis. Intelligent life in the starry sky world didn't have souls. Even the machine race's father god lacked them. But in the Marvel universe, with the Mind Stone, giving Jarvis something like a soul would be straightforward. Looks like I'll be leaning on you again, young master, Jarvis said earnestly. No problem. Remember when Tony ditched me on the couch to spend the night with some beautiful woman? You were the one telling 2-year-old me bedtime stories, Lion grinned. Those stories were a bit dull, but I remember them, Jarvis replied. Pepper's eyebrows shot up. There was such a thing? Tony. Why do you remember things from 10 years ago so clearly, Lion? Ow, Pepper, be gentle. I've apologized for that 1,000 times. Ow. Tony yelped as Pepper pinched him. Everyone laughed. They were happy to see the playboy Tony squirm. After that, the questions came fast. Betty wanted to know if Jarvis had formed a neural network. Pepper asked if he could help run the company. Shirley asked his thoughts on Leon, the professional. The lively day passed quickly. That night, they all gathered at Lion's apartment for dinner before going their separate ways. With Tony's permission, Jarvis, newly alive in a different sense, began to roam the world's networks, exploring experiences he'd never had. A week later, it was September. Lion strode into Columbia University like he owned the place. The instant he stepped across the gate, more than a dozen cameras clicked, capturing sunlight on his profile. The next day, the shot splashed across dozens of tabloids. Major newspapers had been warned not to report casually about the Starks, so only small tabloids dared touch the story. Their headlines read, Stark heir returns, looking arrogant. After a year away, Lion Stark enrolls. Genius or prodigal scion? Columbia girls beware, the wolf has arrived. Tony's profile as Iron Man had exploded, especially after the release of the film Iron Man and Superman Origin. The box office boomed, and Iron Man's fame only grew. People threw popcorn and hurled insults at him in the streets, accusing the film of rewriting Superman's image. They didn't believe the movie's version of Superman being embarrassed by Iron Man, but there was no public Superman to counter the story. The controversy only made the movie more popular. Any news linked to the Starks became instant hot property, and when Lyon's photos hit the papers, dozens of small tabloids flew off the shelves. Gossip about him spread through New York. Would he host a party filled with women on his first night? Would he throw money in a professor's face? The September wind off the Atlantic brought nothing but Lyon gossip between meals. Everyone wanted scandal from a celebrity family's ordinary son to spice up their lives. But Lyon stayed calm. On his first day, he checked in without fanfare, skipped freshman orientation, and politely declined anyone's attempts at conversation. He was so low-key, he looked just like any good-looking student. The lack of drama disappointed many who had been waiting for a show, but the papers still sold, just to a different crowd. Suddenly, Lyon's face was on bedroom walls from 60-year-old Aunt Susan to 7-year-old Michelle Jones. Headlines softened. Lyon Stark spotted on campus. Stark heir walks with poise, accompanied by beauties, a noble demeanor. Lyon's latest handsome shot. The photo-selling frenzy lasted 2 days. On his 4th day at Columbia, the tabloids escalated. Shocking! Lyon Stark subdues economics professor by unknown means. Professor clings to his thigh, won't let him leave. Stark heir shows supergenial talent, defeats all department tutors in a day. Crying out in pain, why did a Columbia professor yell that Lyon Stark is not human? Nobel Prize winner Gary Becker rushes to Columbia, invites Lyon to the University of Chicago. The stories peaked overnight. What began as vague gossip, Lyon subdued a professor, morphed into claims that scholars were clamoring to recruit him. Everyone suddenly decided Lyon must be a rare genius. Morning papers featured daily analyses, his physique, his temperament, his talents, and some columns even slipped into crude speculation, drawing intimate conclusions from the size of his nose and the cut of his jaw. Those titillating pieces sold the best. Jarvis, who had been monitoring the media, gathered evidence. The tabloids had used Lyon's portrait without permission. The legal department would make quick work of them. With the photos and unauthorized reports they'd used, Stark Industries' legal team, backed by Jarvis's documentation, would have all the grounds they needed to put those small papers out of business. Chapter 163. Chapter also needs to pass the university quickly. It was the 5th day since he'd enrolled. Leon stood on the graduation stage. The morning sun poured warmly into the empty auditorium. The principal, dressed in his doctoral robe, smiled from the high platform, adjusted the tassel on Leon's cap, then shook his hand firmly. Congratulations on your graduation, Leon. Don't forget to come back to visit your alma mater. I'm sure the $20 million scholarship fund you donated yesterday will help many outstanding students. Leon smiled. Thank you, Principal. Next year I'll come back and donate a building. The row of professors nearby broke into enthusiastic applause. They'd been impressed by Leon's knowledge the day before, and that evening they'd received a large injection of research funding. Overnight, all of Leon's compulsory courses had been cleared, his credits tallied, and his express lane to graduation had set off and arrived in a single night. Now they applauded with genuine admiration, some looking like they wanted to rush the stage, hug his leg, and keep clapping. A graceful symphony began to swell, and the low stage seemed to fill with music and a sense of history. In the auditorium below, hundreds of burgundy velvet seats were mostly empty. Only 3 family members sat in the front row, Tony, Pepper, and Shirley, each wearing a different expression. Pepper clapped along with the professors, but reluctantly, half annoyed, half amused. She'd sent Leon to university to experience youth, the bittersweetness of friendship and romance. Instead, he'd quietly done his own thing, enrolled, finished all his courses in record time, and even rushed his thesis, which had the luck of being published in a core journal that morning. It was a flawless university record, if a university could be finished in 4 days instead of 4 years. Pepper imagined it as a dorm strapped to a rocket. The ignition started the moment he enrolled, and a few days later it slammed down at Mach 31. Tony shook his head as he clapped. He thought Leon didn't know what he'd missed. So many lovely arms, so many dazzling legs, so many flowing skirts, countless nights of beautiful dreams. This kid was still too naive. Tony sighed, wishing Leon had even a fraction of his own experience. Shirley, meanwhile, was ecstatic. Her applause matched the professor's. She simply thought her big brother Leon was getting more and more amazing. On stage, Leon posed for a photo with the principal, holding his graduation certificate, then hugged each professor. Though they'd known him only a day, they acted like mentors bidding a favored student farewell, pursed lips, blinking hard, nodding as if trying to hold back tears. Leon humored the ensemble, promised additional research funding, and finally left the stage in his gown with his family. Normally, at a moment like this, families ask about future plans and feel a twinge of wistfulness. But Leon and his didn't. In 5 days, he hadn't even properly explored the campus, so there was no sense of goodbye. Pepper did have one practical question. "So you finished your studies. Natasha's taken over the company again. What are you going to do next? You can't just sit at home all day." "I still have to protect the Earth," Leon said, shrugging. "How could I be idle?" "Protect Earth? From whom? Tony? Or from yourself?" Pepper shot him an exasperated look. From her perspective, most of the situations that called for Leon's intervention were created by him or Tony. "You make it sound like Tony and I are the troublemakers." "We're just protecting the world in our own way," Tony cut in. Leon suddenly changed his tone. "Tony is clearly the one who causes trouble." Pepper paused, then laughed. "You know, that's actually true." "Hey, Leon, I thought we were on the same side." Tony's face darkened. "Are we?" Leon said, pointing ahead. "Look, your trouble is here again, and this time I'm solving it for you, though it doesn't look completely solved yet." At the school gate, 2 figures stepped out of the pavilion. Wanda and Pietro. They'd apparently been waiting. The morning sun stripped their shadows short. Those shadows fell behind them like knives. Tony felt the air shift, an unfriendly aura, and narrowed his eyes. The 2 were young, a man and a woman in similar short-sleeved tops and jeans, one in cool light blue, the other in warm dark red. Their faces were unreadable, and their gaze was locked on the small group, particularly on Tony. Their synchronized posture and cold focus reminded Tony of his own and Leon's revenge-driven days against Hydra, yet they looked far too young, still marked by the bluntness of naivety. "Who are they?" Tony whispered. "A brother and sister from Sokovia," Leon answered. "Their parents were killed by a missile with Stark written on it when they were 10. Later they joined Hydra and became operatives." Tony fell silent. The weapons sold to foreign forces had been trafficked by Obadiah, but as the creator and manufacturer, Tony felt he shared the blame for the tragedies. He took his hands out of his pockets and stopped walking, bracing for whatever might come, a punch, a knife. He felt the need to face them directly. Leon and the others fell in step beside him. As the siblings drew closer, the features of the young woman and man became clearer. The sister's bone structure was striking. Her skin was white as ice, dazzling in the sun, like a flower and a blade at once. The brother was tall and reserved, as if he were a dormant volcano holding back his heat. Their eyes never left Tony, full of unresolved resentment. Not an old blood feud, but a steady, practiced hatred cultivated by imagining, day after day, what it would be like to punch Tony's obnoxious face. When they were 3 meters away, they stopped. Under the group's watchful eyes, the sister reached into her jeans side pocket. Tony braced himself for a knife or a handgun. Instead, she pulled out a black card, trimmed in gold, the Citibank Ultima Black. The black card was stamped with the kind of prestige that bent the world in its holder's favor. A Citibank black card, the kind that opened doors from boardrooms to admissions offices, that could smooth over political problems and household bills alike. In the sunlight, the gold filigree on its surface gleamed like a promise. Wanda flung that promise at Leon. She didn't aim to hit him. The chestnut-haired girl threw the card at his face, and Leon caught it between 2 fingers, cool as ever. Pietro, her brother, twitched beside her, the muscle around his mouth betraying the stab of humiliation. Wanda's eyes were knives. No regret warmed them. She fixed Leon with a glare, but addressed Tony. "The money's being returned." Her voice was steady, hard as glass. "We'll find out what really happened that night ourselves. Don't think we're going to let you blame the dead and be believed. Even if you're Superman, we won't back down. We don't want Stark money." Leon looked down at the card, the light puddling across the embossed letters. Natasha had been thoughtful. She'd handed the siblings both cash and a card. He felt something like déjà vu at the girl's implacable stance, but that dissolved into bewilderment as Wanda turned back to Tony. "Even if Obadiah sold those bombs, you're not innocent," she said. "You manufactured them. You're just as culpable." Pietro, who had only just pulled himself together after the shock of seeing a large sum vanish, nodded fiercely. "This isn't over." They took a few steps back, standing shoulder to shoulder and staring at Tony like a warning. Tony swallowed, bewildered, and then, quietly, slowly, said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what happened, and I regret things I did in the past. I've been trying to make amends." He reached out and put the black card back into Wanda's hand. "Take it. You need it." They didn't take it. Instead, their eyes hardened into ice. "Do you think money can fix everything?" Pietro snapped. 9 years ago, that night. Wanda's voice broke. Red rims ringed her eyes. "We were watching the Dick Van Dyke Show on the sofa. It should have been a warm night. We were safe. Then the bombs came. The building collapsed. I dragged Pietro under the bed. Mom and Dad were already gone. Then the second bomb, 3 feet from us. It had Stark painted on it. We thought every second would be our last." "That bomb could have gone off any minute," Pietro said. "We huddled under that bed for 2 days. We counted every brick someone moved when they searched the rubble and wondered if that would be the moment it detonated," Wanda whispered. "We were waiting to die." Pietro pulled out a small photograph from his jacket. 4 people smiling. A family. "I don't have grand words. I only have this. Besides this photo, we have nothing left." "We won't forgive you," Wanda said. "But Superman saved Sokovia. We owe him that much. We'll investigate the truth ourselves." They turned and left. Tony didn't stop them this time. He had hoped to argue nuance, to explain the difference between the maker and the seller, but watching those two, he understood. Fear and the smell of death for 2 days under a bed did not leave room for reason. Some wounds were too deep to be bandaged with money. "Wait." Leon's voice cut after them. They paused. Wanda's impatience flared, but it faded the instant she saw who had called. They had been deliberately ignoring Leon. He was a Stark, too, which made him part of the problem. But Leon was also Superman. 2 months earlier, when something like a catastrophe threatened Sokovia, it had been Superman who carried the aircraft carrier into position above the city and kept it there. From the Hydra base where the twins had been trapped, watching that carrier lift away had been the first thing that made them feel, improbably, that survival might still be possible. They had cheered and cried when it left. Wanda and Pietro still had complicated feelings about Leon, gratitude braided with anger. Pietro had 2 photos in his hand once, the family picture and another of Superman, but he'd hidden the Superman photo. He didn't want someone with X-ray vision looking through his things. "What do you want?" Wanda asked, lips tight. Leon stepped forward. He smiled, and his voice was softer than she expected. "I understand you. I know your names." Pietro's face shifted, surprise and a flicker of something like pride. "You know our names?" "Good names are easy to remember," Leon said. Then his tone hardened. "I know what it's like to want revenge. I had my enemies too, Hydra." Wanda and Pietro stared, caught off guard. "When I was 1 year old, Hydra's Winter Soldier killed my adoptive parents and almost strangled me to death," Leon said. "I chose revenge. I hunted them down. Hydra has been dealt with." He said it plainly, almost too plainly. "I killed Winter Soldier's comrades. I destroyed Hydra's network." For a moment, the twins could only stare. Leon's eyes brightened, a faint red irising at the corners. The air around him seemed to thicken. The sudden intensity of his stare made their stomachs drop. "If you chase revenge, be prepared to have it chase you back," Leon warned. "If I move against someone who would harm you, I won't hold back." Pietro's breath hitched. "Wait, we haven't done anything yet." Wanda's hands went cold with sweat. She regretted coming all the way here just to vent. The idea of threatening a Stark who could be Superman had been foolish in hindsight. She stepped instinctively to shield her brother, but looking into Leon's gaze turned her body to stone. Then, as abruptly as the threat had arisen, Leon seemed to shift. He relaxed, the red glow in his eyes fading. His smile returned, warm, almost conspiratorial. "I don't think you'll find what you're looking for by attacking random people," he said. "If Obadiah did this, it wasn't Tony. It wasn't Stark Industries. I believe that. He eased the tension in his voice. The money Natasha gave you, that wasn't meant as atonement. It was an apology. And if you want to investigate properly, the easiest way is to get close to Stark Industries. Come with Tony and me. Spend time inside the company. You'll have access you can't get on the outside. If you want the truth, being on the inside will make it easier to find. Wanda and Pietro watched him. The Superman they'd feared and the friendly, almost brotherly man who stood in the sun were the same person, and neither image made everything any clearer. Huh? Pietro managed. They both stood there, stunned, their anger, their fear, their need for answers colliding until they couldn't think straight. The chill gradually eased and sunlight returned to the room, but Wanda and Pietro's minds remained blank. The near-death suffocating sensation they just felt had been real. So had the friendly smile before them. They couldn't tell which image of Liang was the true one. Perhaps that's what someone like him was. A single thought could send ordinary people from heaven to hell, or lift them back again. Liang patted their shoulders with a smile. There was no trace of killing intent in him. Instead, a thin veil of will emanated from him. With World Master-level willpower at its peak, a single look could induce brain death in anyone below the stellar rank in the starry sky world. What Wanda and Pietro had experienced was only the sensation of confronting death, the result of his extreme restraint. He wanted them calm, to make them think carefully before they spoke again. The effect was perfect. The siblings looked at him with fear and reverence, and even an odd sense of attachment, like a mild Stockholm syndrome. "All right then," Liang said. "Jarvis will set you up with work. You can check into anything you want to know, any investigation you want to make, within Stark Industries." He shoved a black card back into Pietro's hand. "Keep this. The money on it is not meant to trample on your dignity or erase your past suffering. It's a mark of respect and a reward for your courage in facing hardship." "But," Wanda hesitated, "what is it?" Lang's eyes flashed red for a moment, then softened. "No, nothing." Wanda's struggling heart stilled. She took the card like a schoolgirl at attention. "Good. If you need anything in the future, contact Jarvis online and tell him. He'll take care of it. Go home for now," Liang added, waving them off. "Don't talk about revenge until you're prepared. You deserve a better future. Don't let hatred blind you." He knew it sounded hypocritical. He himself had been the sort to settle scores rather than let a wrong go. Yet whenever he held the power, he could speak with authority. The current Wanda was not yet the Scarlet Witch. Her powers hadn't fully awakened. If she were the overpowered Wanda of legend, he would have to consider other solutions, moving her family to another world or sending them into seclusion for ages. Chaos magic, which could rewrite reality, was simply unmanageable. The morning sun felt warm. Pietro and Wanda had come in ferocious and left obedient. Neither side explicitly said what would become of that hatred, but everyone understood. The siblings were people of integrity. Their minds might not be entirely clear, but since they'd accepted the black card, they wouldn't pursue revenge. Besides, their vendetta couldn't be pinned to Tony alone. Liang shrugged at Tony. "See? I solved another big problem for you." Tony rolled his eyes so hard, Liang wondered if they'd disappear. "Thanks a lot." 2 days passed. Things unfolded a little unexpectedly. The day after Wanda and Pietro left Liang's presence, they followed Jarvis's arrangement and reported to the Avengers. They didn't stay there as long-term staff. Tony spent a long time talking with them in his office that day. Liang didn't know whether it was reconciliation or simply a way to relinquish their military power. But that afternoon, Tony enrolled them at Columbia University. Wanda in the business school. Liang had just graduated from Pietro in the sports program. Liang smirked, guessing Tony thought their education was too low and their minds too stubborn, so he'd put them somewhere to be molded. The siblings hadn't had formal schooling since they were 10. Their ideas retained an untouched, incomplete beauty. Still, none of that mattered anymore. Today was the day Liang's Blood Sea clone would be born. Inside his inner world, the Space Stone's energy filled every visible corner. In this world, 900,000 kilometers across, the sky and the land glowed cerulean as endless blue energy surged toward a crimson giant egg hanging high overhead. The egg towered 100 kilometers. Liang watched as cracks formed along its shell, widening until the shell shattered, sending sand-like fragments cascading down like a blood-red ocean. From that sea of crimson shards, a colossus rose, 100 kilometers tall. Liang's consciousness split automatically. One perspective remained with his main body, the other inhabited the new titan. It felt natural, as if he had been born to hold two viewpoints at once. "What a wondrous feeling," he murmured. He willed the giant's arm to rise, not control so much as command over his own body. The arm spanned 40 kilometers, skin like flawless white jade with faint blood-red veins beneath the surface. He ran his hand over enormous pectoral and abdominal muscles spanning several kilometers and felt a rare satisfaction. The only cosmetic regret was that the clone was hairless, completely smooth, like a sculptor's unclothed model. Its lower body showed no secondary sexual characteristics. It was essentially a neutral humanoid form crafted for purpose, not for reproduction. What mattered far more than appearance was talent. The Blood Sea clone's genetic multiple was 300 times that of an ordinary body, slightly higher than Liang's main form. It had two innate abilities, oceanification and creation. Oceanification allowed the clone to transform from a standing giant into a sea with a diameter 10 times its height. With the clone 100 kilometers tall, the Blood Sea could stretch to 1,000 kilometers across. Creation, usable when oceanified, let the clone use energy to create life. Any life forms it created would be absolutely obedient to Liang, their creator. But creation required a full genetic blueprint of the species intended. Given Liang's current research, he could only fabricate simple, low-level organisms for now. Chapter 166, Breakthrough Again. The true power of Leon's creation ability was that he could form a small Blood Sea clone using his own genes. The little clone had only 1/10 the genetic level and 1/10 the height of the original, but it could dissolve itself after the Blood Sea was refilled with energy, returning its energy to the Blood Sea and thereby expanding its volume. Because creating the small Blood Sea clone cost almost nothing, Leon could even use it as a disposable, self-destructing tool in battle. On the boundless ground, he commanded, "Transform into sea." Leon's thought rippled through the formation, and the Blood Sea clone's huge body suddenly dissolved. Flesh and bone flowed like rivers down his form, until his entire body became a blood sea with 1,000-kilometer diameter, spreading across the earth like a mythic mountain becoming an ocean. "Create," Leon continued. The Blood Sea gurgled and surged, and a smaller giant emerged from its waves, a 10-kilometer-tall figure whose genetic level was far below the original. At the same time, the Blood Sea lost about 1/10 of its energy. Restore. Leon immediately activated the Space Stone to replenish the Blood Sea's lost energy. Dissolve. Under Leon's command, the small Blood Sea clone dissolved, its entire body becoming seawater and flowing back into the Blood Sea. The sea's volume immediately increased by that 1/10. Repeating this back and forth a few more times would allow the Blood Sea to keep growing. Very soon, Leon realized a continually expanding Blood Sea could serve as a mobile armory in battle. The Blood Sea could also act as a backup energy reservoir to restore Leon's reserves at any time. For now, though, carrying 100,000 suns made that backup unnecessary. No rush to expand the Blood Sea yet, Leon told himself. The Blood Sea clone is only cosmic level first order for the moment. Focus on strengthening it first. He felt his flowing body in a way that was not sighted but complete. He could sense everything within the Blood Sea. "Restore to original body," he ordered. The vast sea surged, and the extra 1/10 of energy dissipated into the space of his inner world. The 100-kilometer-tall giant reformed and stood up from the earth. On the ground, where waves had once roiled, not a drop of water remained. Leon tapped his arm. Back to solid form. Turning into water just now was quite interesting. Now it's time to cultivate. The towering giant sat on a hill like one settling onto a small stool and began to take in the energy pouring from the Space Stone. Azure power again permeated the air, while green light from the Time Stone flickered in the spatial interlayer. 10,000 days in the inner world for every 10 days in the real world. The Blood Sea clone successfully broke through to the same realm as the main body, Domain Lord, 9th Order. While the clone gestated, the energy dispelled by the space stone also integrated into Leon's inner world and body. With the 100,000 suns in his world ring and the added blessing of this energy, Leon's main body likewise reached Domain Lord Ninth Order. As long as there was no outside interference, Leon could continue cultivating uninterrupted. Improving and strengthening his power was his constant goal, and the satisfaction of growing stronger was far greater than solving any mental puzzle, irresistible in its own way. It's time to break through to Domain Lord properly, he decided. Leon's main body in the Brooklyn apartment stood up and then vanished, not by teleportation, but by extreme acceleration. He crossed the 300-kilometer distance from ground to space in less than a millisecond, turned and flew toward the moon to attempt the breakthrough there. He had been stuck at Domain Lord Ninth Order for a long time, waiting for the clone to gestate so they could ascend together. But being stalled at that level had led to an unexpected discovery. Although the intensity of his genetic primal energy and psychic power wouldn't increase while stuck at that realm, his body could still grow stronger under the sun's illumination. The rate of that strengthening matched the rate at which his genetic primal energy had strengthened after reaching Domain Lord Ninth Order. After studying the effect, Leon concluded, even though he had switched to the Starry Sky system, the Kryptonian bloodline strengthening via sunbathing was not constrained by the system. Even if my realm is stuck, my body can still grow stronger under the sun. Right now, my power is actually almost on par with Domain Lord's Second Order, he thought. Once I break through to Domain Lord formally, this additional strength should quickly convert into Starry Sky system power. In effect, Leon was cultivating both the Kryptonian system and the Starry Sky system at once. The two systems fed each other. The Starry Sky system's genetic evolution could drive transformations in his Kryptonian bloodline, while the Kryptonian bloodline's gains could accelerate growth in his Starry Sky system power. The result was greater than the sum of its parts. Leon sat cross-legged on the moon. Inside his inner world, the vast Blood Sea clone also sat on a hill. Both bodies began to break through simultaneously. Within the inner world, the boundless continent ravenously absorbed the space stone's energy. Golden light drifted in the air like something out of a dream. Under that seemingly endless gem energy, the 900,000-kilometer diameter world began to expand. Towering mountains rose into the clouds, vast rivers coursed through the valleys, and signs of life began to stir. The world power contained in the realm became increasingly pure. For others, breaking through to Domain Lord required opening an inner world, but Leon already had one. His breakthrough this time was smooth and unhindered. All he needed to do was transform his existing inner world into a true world capable of giving birth to life. A day passed slowly. When Leon rose again on the moon, he had reached Domain Lord's Second Order. Simultaneously, the Blood Sea clone in his inner world also ascended to Domain Lord, its height swelling to 10,000 kilometers. Leon watched the dramatically changed inner world with his consciousness. He planned to have the Blood Sea clone transform into an ocean and remain in his inner world, using the two gems to study the laws, while his main body stayed in the outside world, continuing to strengthen under the 100,000 suns. Right now, my main body is roughly 2,000 times stronger than when I first returned from the Starry Sky world, he said, clenching his fist. This was the advantage of the Starry Sky system in its early stages. With ample energy and adequate law comprehension, growth could be rapid. The Time Stone's acceleration and the Space Stone's energy supply had also sped the process. Otherwise, even producing the Blood Sea clone would have taken decades. Progress beyond Domain Lord, however, would be slower. In the Starry Sky world, advancing from Domain Lord to the next stage, Immortal, required fully comprehending a lower-level law. The same basic rule applied in the Marvel Universe. Though their laws weren't identical, Leon's conditions for breakthrough were similar. The essence of the Starry Sky cultivation system was understanding the universe's structure to create one's own world. So his next task was to comprehend the constituent elements of the Marvel Universe, the basic laws. These laws were not hard to locate. The Marvel Cinematic Universe had been shaped by the explosion of 6 singularities containing infinite energy. These singularities were later distilled into the 6 Infinity Stones, representing time, space, power, reality, mind, and soul, the 6 fundamental power attributes of that single universe. Leon intuited that fully comprehending one of those 6 basic powers would be enough to break through to Lawmaster. If he mastered 2, his standing would be even higher. If he could comprehend all 6, he believed it would be sufficient to ascend beyond true God. Beyond that, the natural path would be to fuse those 6 powers and create his own universe. Of course, he didn't have to follow that path. The Kryptonian bloodline already had a very high ceiling. The strength could continue rising even without further realm breaks. Still, before anything else, Leon had to reach Immortal and secure the eternity of life. To break through to Immortal, he still needed to comprehend a minor law derived from the 6 major powers, for example, the law of light that he was currently focusing on. I've comprehended 1/10 of the law of light, and my progress in time and space is good, Leon thought. Using the laws, my speed can increase to nearly twice the speed of light. He clenched his fist and felt immense power surge through every inch of his body. If before he could barely throw a punch that would destroy Earth, now he could already deliver one that would obliterate Jupiter. The next step, punching to destroy the sun, was only another few orders of magnitude away, roughly 1,000 times more power. The diameter of my inner world has expanded to 20 million kilometers, he noted. But Luo Feng's inner world eventually reached 1 trillion kilometers. I'm still far from that. Leon looked down at the desolate lunar surface beneath him and felt an urge to test his strength. The rise in power brought with it an instinctive craving to destroy something. He spread his biofield over the moon and stomped gently. The entire moon, weighing an astronomical 700 quintillion tons, vibrated violently. It was as if an extraterrestrial meteor had struck it dead center. Huge cracks radiated from under his feet like a spiderweb to the horizon. From space, the moon would have looked riddled with holes and fissures running all the way through, intact at first glance, but fragile enough to crumble under a light touch. Leon nodded in satisfaction. If he didn't restrain himself and didn't use his biofield, every movement of his would now carry continental-level destruction. Feeling good, he thought, giving himself a mental thumbs up. Suddenly, he remembered waking up in a manned spacecraft months ago. The thrill back then had been the same. He'd even shoved the hatch open with one hand, convinced he was comparable to gods like Odin or Captain Marvel. Now it seemed that he might actually be close. Captain Marvel, in the MCU, didn't appear to have planet-busting power even in her double star mode. Perhaps she couldn't fully unleash it. Her potential, though, was unquestionable. In the What If series, another version of Captain Marvel did shatter a planet fighting 6 Infinity Stone Ultron. A rush of urgent voices reached his ears, so close it felt like they were whispering at his temple. Someone on the moon is calling for help. He listened. The people here, it's the Inhumans. He could hear the other side of the moon clearly now. Black Bolt and Medusa were directing civilians to evacuate. Recent tremors had destroyed large swaths of their city. Leon had barely paid attention to the moon before. Those distant sounds usually filtered through as background noise, and he'd almost forgotten the Inhumans maintained a small presence there. In testing his power, he had isolated the moon with his biofield to avoid affecting Earth, but he'd neglected to account for people on the far side. It wasn't hard to fix. Leon had already planned for cleanup. He extended a finger and channeled the vast well of genetic primal energy inside him into a spell. "Restore to original state," he ordered. The energy turned into magic and wrapped the moon. The spiderweb cracks beneath his feet zipped closed. The surface knit itself back together, and Attilan and the Inhumans' buildings on the far side were restored. Relief and baffled voices flowed into his hearing. Leon shook his head. If he wanted to test his strength properly, he should use the Dream Eater Arena in the Time Fortress or the Mirror Dimension. He looked toward Earth. It's time to go back. I was gone only a day. Nothing should have happened. During a breakthrough, he stayed so absorbed in his genetic evolution that only truly urgent calls, like from Tony or others, could pierce his superhearing. But, with the restrictions lifted and the layers of sound returning, the noise of Earth made his expression go strange. Wong and Mordo? Shouldn't they be teaching new magic? Why are they looking for me? He rocketed off the moon and returned to Kamartaj in an instant. He landed lightly on the training ground, nodded to the sorcerers who bowed, and walked toward the inner hall. As he stepped through the doorway, he saw the four gathered together. Wong speaking via holographic projection with Tony in New York, while Mordo and Bruce Banner sat cross-legged nearby. Banner wore a sleeveless brownish-yellow training suit and looked like a yoga master. Mordo's eyes were dark with concern. "Leon, you're finally back," Wong and Mordo exclaimed when they saw him. "We couldn't find you with the mystic art of portals. My biofield can block perception," Leon said. "Next time, try calling me a few more times. I was only gone a day and even left a message. Why the rush?" he added. Leon half expected the answer to be some dimensional intrusion. "Has a dimensional demon god attacked?" Wong's face went serious. "Not yet, but it's probably closer than you think." The news of the Ancient One's death spread across nearby dimensions the day she was cremated, Wong explained as he led Leon out of the inner hall. "Since then, we've dealt with a few stray dimensional creatures, but nothing on the scale of a demon god. They know, so long as Agamotto's 3 sanctuaries stand, no demon god can enter Earth in full power." "So which demon god?" Leon asked. "Dormammu," Wong said gravely. "You know him, the Lord of the Dark Dimension. If he does enter Earth, the consequences will be unimaginable. But the 3 sanctuaries are still intact. How could he get through?" Leon raised an eyebrow. Wong's hologram of Tony hurried forward, anxious. "No, wait. Don't just leave. Finish explaining. An invasion by a dimensional demon god is a global event. How could it happen without my help?" Wong shot the projection an exasperated look. "This is not a job for Iron Man. This is a matter for Superman," he barked, then paused at his own words, annoyed at the ridiculousness of the idea. He had seen Iron Man and Superman origins in the city 2 days ago and was still irritated at Tony for fabricating facts. How could the Sorcerer Supreme of Kamartaj possibly cause a world-ending crisis in another universe? If he weren't trying to find Leon, he would have scolded the projection for shamelessness. Chapter 168, Zhang Liang, let Caecilius lure Dormammu out. Leon shrugged. "Tony, stay here and don't move. I'll come back and tell you what happened once this is settled." With that, he and Wong walked out of the inner hall together, Mordo close behind. Tony's projection called after them, "Wait," in a frantic voice, but the 3 backs were already moving away. "Tony, it's okay. I'll take you with me," Banner said softly, picking up the comm unit and following with Tony's projection. Wong led Leon into the library. The room was lined with familiar bookshelves, the old arrangement unchanged. As they passed the outer stacks, a figure hanging upside down in midair came into view. He wore a yellow-brown robe. Dreadlocks fell from his head. Veins stood out on his forehead, his eyes were clenched shut, and the skin around his sockets had been eaten by the dark dimension's corruption, black and necrotic like a grotesque smoky eye. Leon recognized the effects of dark dimension energy at a glance. "That's Caecilius," Wong said. "Not long ago he hanged the former librarian and beheaded him." "He led some masters out of Kamartaj," Mordo added. "He's very dangerous." Tony's projection floated closer to inspect. Even unconscious with eyes closed, Caecilius's face wore an indifferent, gloomy calm, like a venomous snake lying dormant. "I can tell this guy's bad news," Tony said. "But you said he's dangerous, and yet you subdued him. Are you bragging?" Wong shook his head gravely. "He underestimated us. A few hours ago, Caecilius brought his followers and attacked the London sanctum. He must have heard about the Ancient One's death and prepared. He came to destroy the sanctum." Wong's expression hardened. Fortunately, Tony had just helped us improve our communications and alarm systems. He glanced at Tony. "When the alarm went off, Mordo and I rushed over. Caecilius ignored me. I'm not a familiar face to him. So while he was engaged with Mordo, I used a stupefy curse and knocked him out. I didn't expect it to work at first. We fought off the masters with him and brought him here to the library. We've been keeping him restrained with an inverted bell and repeated stupefy." Leon nodded. Wong had indeed done a lot, and Tony's upgraded alarm system had been crucial. 2 weeks earlier, Wong and Mordo had drafted a new teaching plan for Kamartaj's magic system, and Leon had asked Tony to help modernize it. Now projections dotted the temple. Masters could tap their wrists to play holographic lessons recorded by Wong and Mordo and learn new spells. A big data cultivation system in the training ground suggested the most suitable spellcasting methods for each practitioner, letting them progress more reliably. For the rare bloodline elixirs and other reagents needed to master new arts, Mordo and Banner had negotiated a long-term cooperation to breed and supply magical creatures, and they were preparing a magical animal breeding base at Kamartaj. The new teaching model was taking shape steadily. "Well done, Wong." Leon clapped him on the back. "But you've handled this. Is there any other danger?" "No, not right now," Wong said, pleased by the praise. "It's just that you weren't at the sanctum, and Mordo and I were uneasy." Mordo chimed in, more troubled. "Caecilius's followers will almost certainly try to come back to rescue him. The obvious option would be to execute him. He's a traitor, but that requires your decision, Leon." "Execute him?" Leon shook his head. "I have a better idea." He looked at the two men. Since the Ancient One's death, the number of interdimensional demon lords trying to probe and attack the sanctum has been increasing, hasn't it? "That's right," Mordo said. "They're testing our strength." Leon crossed his arms. "With the Ancient One gone, Kamartaj lost its greatest power. They're testing us now. Later they'll launch a full-scale assault. We can't just keep defending. Instead of passively defending and bleeding ourselves dry, we should go on the offensive." "Defense has never been my style," Leon said. "We need to set an example, show a strength that makes our enemies retreat. Caecilius's attack is an opportunity." Although cautious by nature, Leon did not hesitate when action was required. The Ancient One had warned that the Marvel Cinematic Universe was already entering a multiversal war. In the main universe, superheroes were likely already clashing with variants of Kang. At the same time, entities like Mephisto or other Hell Lords could now fix their covetous eyes on Earth. Becoming Sorcerer Supreme at this moment would not be like Strange's situation in the films with only Dormammu to worry about. Leon could expect multiple cosmic-level threats. A clear, forceful display of strength was necessary, at minimum to make the interdimensional predators look elsewhere for a while. "Counterattack?" Mordo asked, startled. "How? Are you saying we should go into the dark dimension to find Dormammu?" "You can't fight a dimensional god in its own realm," Wong said. "Their power is absolute inside their world." Leon nodded. He understood. Dimensional entities draw most of their might from their own planes. Beyond those borders, they're weaker. Dormammu on his home turf could be virtually a world, perhaps even comparable to cosmic entities in raw power. That's why Leon refused to take the fight to the dark dimension. He would force Dormammu to come out. "Of course not," Leon said. "We'll lure him out into our world, then close the doorway and finish him here." "How do we lure him?" Mordo's eyes widened. Leon produced a small world ring and looked at the bound Caecilius. "I have a sacrifice, a priest right here." Caecilius served Dormammu. We use him as bait. It couldn't be easier to draw Dormammu into the open. Chapter 169, Guardian of the Temple, Sacrifice? Mordo's feverish mind flared hotter still at the sight of the ring until he felt dizzy. Could this ring be such a supreme artifact that even Dormammu would leave the dark dimension for it? Leon said only, "Inside this is a world," and led them to the ring without further explanation. He let them peer into the band. Inside, a vast continent swam under distant stars. Then he returned to the library. The length, width, and height of the world inside are each 1 trillion kilometers, about 0.1 light years. Facing such a temptation, Dormammu would hardly resist, Leon said, tossing the ring lightly into the air. Although Earth has a unique pull for him, this should appeal just as much. He conjured several magical chains to secure the ring and traced Vishanti's defensive runes around it. Because the world inside the ring is a complete, independent space, it's effectively a pocket dimension embedded within our universe. "So afterward, I will take Caecilius inside to perform the ritual," Leon continued. "When that happens, Dormammu will bypass the Sanctum's protective shield and enter the ring itself to devour the world." Leon clapped his hands, dusting off non-existent dust. "And I'll be there to fight him. If I can drive him away, the plan succeeds." He couldn't pretend to know for certain he could defeat Dormammu, only that he must not lose. Mordo and the others, still stunned by the vision inside the ring, stared at Leon in a mix of awe and disbelief. For a moment, their expressions were like people in a frontier town watching a steamship blow its whistle for the first time. A personal world? Mordo stood as if carved from stone. Wong seemed to hear his own chest creak with pain. Such a precious thing to be used as a sacrifice. Dr. Banner scratched his head. Is Dormammu really worth tempting with something like that? Tony's projection flickered. The ring blocked his signal, so he couldn't see what they'd seen. What world? What are you talking about? He looked at the four of them in the room. I've been meaning to ask, what are these sanctums, dimensional demon gods, Dormammu things? Tony had not yet learned Kamartaj's deeper magics and had no background on any of it. Wong sighed and, as always, explained patiently. Kamartaj's duty is to protect Earth from hostile entities that come from other dimensions. Our quarrels with mortals are trivial by comparison. Our true enemies come from elsewhere. For example, dimensional demon gods are rulers of other dimensions. They want to bring Earth into their realms. They attack us constantly. Our main defense is the Sanctum Sanctorum left by Agamotto, the progenitor of magic. There are 3 sanctums, London, Hong Kong, and New York, that together support a shield covering the entire Earth. If the sanctums are destroyed, entities from other dimensions can descend on our world without hindrance. What Caecilius wants, Wong finished, is to summon Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension, and have him devour Earth. Wong said it in one breath, still trembling from the image of the world in the ring. He had rattled the words off partly to steel himself. If the enemy was Dormammu, sacrificing even something as precious as the ring world might be necessary. Damn it, he thought, clenching his sleeve. The fact that the ring belonged to Leon didn't keep him from feeling a pang of grief. Dr. Banner and Tony listened in stunned silence. Both were still only apprentices in the ways of sorcery. Much of what Wong described was new to them. Tony, seated in New York, took a few backward steps and sank into a chair, staring out a floor-to-ceiling window at the neon-lit night. The lights painted the misty sky in a decadent red. Beneath that glittering surface, crises lurked, far more than the files on superhumans and aliens he'd known through S.H.I.E.L.D. He was grateful, in a way, to be part of the sorcerer community now. I want to go too, Tony blurted suddenly, slamming his hand on the desk. Take me to Kamartaj. I can help. Leon raised an eyebrow. I intended to bring you. Without even wearing a sling ring, he waved his hand and opened a mystic art of portals linking Kamartaj and Tony's office. One side showed New York at night, the other, Kamartaj under a clear morning sky. Tony grabbed a device he kept in a drawer, half prop, half superstitious talisman, and stepped through. Dr. Banner hesitated. Leon, are you really going to take Tony? If Dormammu comes, Tony could be in danger. Apart from the big guy inside me, no one here could offer much protection. Take me with you, Leon. Let's go together. Dr. Banner set down his briefcase. Inside were the precious specimens he called his fantastic beasts. He might not return from the mission and wanted Mordo to look after them if he didn't. Dr. Banner, wait. Don't set that down yet, Leon said with a wry smile. I didn't say I was taking you. I'll be the one fighting Dormammu. I'll take Caecilius and his followers into the ring to summon him. He looked at the four of them with no hint of debate. When Dormammu leaves the Dark Dimension and a battle erupts here, other dimensions will almost certainly take notice. Those entities will look for any commotion as an opportunity to strike the sanctums. Your job is to guard the Sanctum Sanctorum while I'm engaging Dormammu. Wong, you go to the Hong Kong Sanctum and lead the sorcerers there. Mordo, you go to the London Sanctum. Take Grandmaster Daniel and Grandmaster Hamir with you. Tony, you're responsible for the New York Sanctum. You can have the Men in Black assist. Dr. Banner, you stay at Kamartaj and respond wherever the situation is most critical. Wong and Mordo recognized the command for what it was, the Sorcerer Supreme's order. They straightened, offered the Sorcerer's salute, and said in unison, understood. Leon then glanced at Tony. By the way, are the Maximov siblings still very hostile toward you? They're doing better, Tony replied. They said to let time prove everything. Sounds simple and harmless enough. Why do you ask? Good. Then I can safely bring them along. Leon drew another portal and began to step through. Bring the siblings over? Are you sure? Why? Tony asked, full of questions. Because they're exceptionally talented, Leon's voice answered from the other side. They can help guard the sanctum. Chapter 170. Wanda and Pietro enter Camartage. The Maximov siblings both had extraordinary gifts. Wanda's chaos magic ranked near the top even in the wider Marvel universe. Leon had been considering bringing her to Camartage for some time. They were one person short for the planned defense against Asgard 3 months from now. Scarlet Witch joining them would be perfect. After their rather unpleasant first meeting at Columbia, Leon hadn't seen the siblings again, until now. He closed the mystic art of portals and realized their apartment was surprisingly close to his. When he arrived, they were in the living room, doing homework. Pietro was griping about a sports program that had somehow turned into sports management, and the readings were giving him a headache. Wanda, meanwhile, was calmly taking notes from a textbook on economic theory. They were far more composed than Leon had expected. Tony had changed them. When he stepped closer, the siblings finally noticed him. Leon! They widened their eyes, gasped, and flattened themselves into the sofa, as if trying to disappear. Their first encounter had left a deep mark. It was late, and Leon's sudden appearance felt like someone coming to kill them under cover of night. Only after Leon explained himself did their tension ease a little. You said you want to help us awaken our powers and then have us protect the sanctum? Wanda asked. Sanctum? What is that? They still didn't quite grasp the strange words Leon used. Sorcerer, sanctum. But after a hesitant exchange, they agreed to follow him through the mystic art of portals. The moment they stepped through, their world changed completely. Night turned to day. The steel and concrete skyline became an ancient compound of brick, tile, and glazed pottery. Stone paths threaded between temple buildings where robed figures jogged in small groups. Some carried unfamiliar weapons, others pushed cannon-like devices that looked lifted from a 20th century army. The crowd was wildly diverse, different races, different features, even minotaurs. A flick of a wrist yielded orange energy whips or circular portals that cut through space. They could have been characters from myth. When the people saw Leon, they all stopped, bowed, and addressed him as Sorcerer Supreme. Wanda and Pietro were stunned. Leon snapped his fingers and said, "Let's go." They followed in a daze toward a grand hall. Inside, 4 people were already gathered. The siblings only recognized Tony Stark. From the conversation, they pieced together that this place protected Earth, that it was called a sanctum, and that an invasion by a dimensional demon god was imminent. Leon intended to take the fight to it. The siblings were shocked. The arrogant, stubborn man they'd known was not only powerful, he was carrying the responsibility of defending the planet. Watching the 5 of them strategize and the sorcerers outside preparing for war, Wanda and Pietro felt foolish about their prior plans for revenge. Suddenly, their grievances seemed childish, and shame rose hot in their chests. Their feelings toward Leon became complicated. In the inner chamber, the last plan was finalized. Everyone head to your sanctums and mobilize the sorcerers. We'll meet at the library in 2 hours to start the operation, Leon said. Wong and Mordo opened a mystic art of portals and left. Tony tapped his arc reactor. A surge of mycelium spread from it. The 10 rings along his arm lit up and began to condense into a massive suit of armor. Then he pointed the magic wand he held at himself and intoned, Velavito, casting a deformation curse. The inflated armor shrank back to human size and fit him perfectly. Mark 10, Tony announced proudly. Condensed fungus god armor combined with a deformation curse, power amplification up to 10 times. Not bad, right? Leon glanced at him and shook his head. Crude deformation curse. You need more practice. This is an advanced deformation curse that only alters appearance, not power. I've been working on it for half a year. Crude? Please. Tony shot back, then flew toward the library to use the fixed mystic art of portals to reach the New York sanctum. Banner jogged behind him. I'll meet you there. After they left, Leon turned to the Maximovs. All right, we need to start awakening your abilities. He pressed his hands to their shoulders, and with a shift of his gaze, the 3 of them were transported into the small world within his body. Oh my goodness, Wanda whispered, taking in the sight. Before them stretched endless land. In the hazy distance rose towering mountains shrouded in deep blue mist, peaks lost to the sky. They seemed 10,000 meters tall at least. Pietro pointed. Look, a gigantic bare foot filled the horizon, toenails so enormous their tips were out of sight. The ankles shot into the clouds and disappeared in the mist. At the giant's feet, an endless ocean sparkled. It was like standing beside a titan. This is one of my small worlds, Leon explained. The air here's saturated with a special kind of energy that helps awaken extraordinary powers. He intended to use the Space Stone's energy to help them. In the movies, it had been the Mind Stone that catalyzed their abilities, but Wanda's chaos magic was innate. She had altered probability as a child to prevent a bomb from exploding. Guided by the Infinity Stone's energy, her power could be fully awakened. Pietro's super speed and the physiological changes that came with it were a natural fit for development through the Space Stone, too. Awakening slowly, isn't that like demon possession? Pietro's voice trembled as he pictured the dimensional demon god Leon had mentioned. Leon's expression was calm. What demon? You don't feel anything? He summoned wisps of blue gem energy and let them brush Pietro's body. Now? No, wait, my heart. Pietro's face changed. He clutched his chest and collapsed. Something rushed into his body and set off a chain reaction. His heart began pounding faster. Blood surged into and out of his chambers. Cells throughout his body began to transform. His temperature spiked, and his skin flushed red. Pietro! Wanda lunged to help, but Leon was quicker. He stepped before Pietro and exhaled a freezing breath. The cold air wrapped around him, dropping his temperature back to normal. Don't worry, this is normal, Leon said. His body's going through metamorphosis. He should finish awakening in about 10 hours. The time here runs on the Time Stone's accelerated rate, Leon added. 10 hours inside will be less than a minute outside. Pietro kept screaming until Leon knocked him out to keep him from injuring himself. Next, it's your turn, Leon told Wanda. Oh, me? Wanda's cheeks flushed and she felt suddenly flustered. Chapter 171, Pre-Battle Preparation and the Dormammu Suit. Wanda didn't know why she was panicking. Maybe it was because Pietro had been knocked out and only she and Leon remained, which made her feel exposed. Maybe it was because she was about to awaken her powers, like Pietro had, and her chest tightened as if something were squeezing it. In short, she was flustered and kept avoiding Leon's gaze. Leon, of course, couldn't understand her anxiety. He flicked his finger, and a ribbon of condensed space stone energy wrapped around Wanda. The next moment, she fell unconscious. In the split second before she went under, Wanda floated into the air, whether from the space stone or some other force she couldn't tell. Dazed, she thought she saw a figure in a red robe with a horned headdress tear through a blue energy veil and enter her. The vision lasted only an instant. She didn't have time to focus before she slipped into a coma and dropped limply. With a wave of his hand, Leon sent her and Pietro to a remote patch of lawn. Leon could sense a strange, surging energy stirring in Wanda's body. Chaos magic, he muttered, testing it with his mental power. The moment his probe touched the energy, it was devoured. As expected, overbearing. He stroked his chin. Maybe this is a path I can use to grow stronger. He thought back to the starry sky world. After comprehending the 10 great laws, one must fuse with the chaos law and then work toward the ultimate Tao. In the Marvel universe, after understanding the 6 basic powers, perhaps one could attempt to fuse with chaos magic, the Phoenix Force, or fairy power. Much remained unknown. All Leon knew was that it would be wise to cultivate a good relationship with Wanda. Access to her power would be convenient for studying chaos magic later. They both need to be unconscious for at least 10 hours, he decided, then floated up toward the time fortress in the center of the world. While I have the time, I should finish my pre-battle preparations. Below, the Blood Sea clone had already expanded into a vast ocean, constantly spawning and dissolving smaller clones to spread the Blood Sea's reach. When the battle came, Leon planned to have 3 backup energy sources, the Space Stone, 10,000 suns, and the Blood Sea. Even if Dormammu turned out stronger than he expected, he could still keep going. He grinned and quoted, half to himself, "I can do this all day." Leon entered the 3rd layer of the fortress to cultivate. The trial steps here amplified force for those with strong enough will. In the past, while the Blood Sea clone had spent 10,000 days advancing to Domain Lord level 9, Leon had increased his force amplification from 100 times to 900 tags and could climb as far as the 999th step. After breaking through to World Lord, his willpower had risen toward immortal level. Now, stepping onto the 1000th step produced only the faintest pressure. He pushed further and reached the 1300th step in one go. The third layer contained 10,000 steps, 1,999 for wills below immortal, 1,000 to 559 for immortal wills, and the remainder up to 1,000 for law venerable level. As Leon cultivated the god body of Zhao, countless tiny points of light welled up from the steps like fireflies and drilled into him, accelerating his force amplification. 8 hours later, he left the third layer. His force amplification had reached 1,300 ties, matching the steps he'd attained. Future progress would be much slower without the steps' assistance, so it made sense to wait for another advance in willpower before returning. Next, he went to the first layer of the fortress, where mountains, lakes, and trees marked the resting place of the beast god of light, Zhao. The lake served as Zhou's pool. The mountains and trees were treasures, as were even the white clouds. These treasures were items either artificially forged or naturally formed in the universe. Some enhanced defense, others could expand into domains to trap enemies. Back when he was weaker, Leon had been unable to use any of them. Now that he had attained World Lord status, he could barely make use of some. On the mountaintop manor, he found a suit of armor, a pair of gloves, a cloak, and a small tower. He spent a few hours carving his soul imprint into each item so he could use them. Because they were simply Zhao's ornaments and had no specific names, Leon nicknamed the set the Dormammu suit. The Dormammu armor could change its appearance and offered extreme defense. Only an attack powerful enough to destroy an entire solar system in one strike could break it. Otherwise, any impact would be weakened to 1/10,000th of its original force. The Dormammu gloves were less remarkable. They once contained secret patterns that could multiply attack power roughly tenfold under the laws of the Starry Sky world, but in the Marvel universe, those patterns lost their effect. Now they were simply very sturdy gloves that provided a small boost to strength. The Dormammu cloak could resist attacks and be used to bind enemies. The small tower, the Tower of Dormammu, was a soul defense device, akin to an enhanced psychic helmet, designed to protect consciousness and the soul. Leon fitted the Dormammu suit onto himself. The armor, gloves, and cloak formed a black uniform. By habit, he kept an S-shaped emblem on his chest. The little tower entered his original nucleus and stood guard over his soul. He flexed his wrist, ready. Pre-battle preparations complete. Now I just wait for Dormammu to fall into my trap. By the time Leon left the Time Fortress, Wanda and Pietro had already been awake for a while, experimenting with their new powers on the plane. Pietro ran back and forth across the grass like a boy released from a cage, carving S-shapes and M-shapes into his path as he laughed. His speed averaged around 5 times the speed of sound, but he still couldn't control it completely. Sometimes he would suddenly slow to ordinary running pace. Wanda's power was more subtle. She stood in one spot, crimson light spilling from her palms as she tried to levitate a tuft of grass in front of her. "It looks like you're both pretty satisfied with your new abilities," Leon said as he landed beside them. The chunk of lawn Wanda had just lifted fell heavily back to earth, startling her. "Oh my God! Can you stop appearing so suddenly and scaring people?" Wanda patted her chest, still flustered. The confidence from awakening her powers was already showing. She even dared to complain to Leon. Chapter 172. 2 people with awakened abilities. "I flew down. I didn't just suddenly appear." Leon pointed to the sky. "You were just too focused." "So what powers did you guys get?" Pietro asked, though Leon already knew. He even raised his voice so the speedster could hear him. Pietro, still at a distance, slowed and then ran back in a blur of afterimages, stopping abruptly in front of Leon. "Super speed and super physique," he shouted, excitedly wiping his nose with his thumb. "That's my power." "Humph. I'm so fast now I'm well past the speed of sound. Your speed might not be on my level, Superman." Leon had already sized him up with supervision. Pietro's speed came with matching physical enhancements, far stronger than an ordinary person, an insanely fast metabolism and accelerated recovery. It wasn't Wolverine-style regeneration, just a massively amplified version of normal healing. Leon smiled. Faster than me? Come on, do you really want to compete with me? It's not impossible. Pietro lifted his chin. He'd let the newfound power go to his head. In the comics he'd read, Superman could sometimes keep pace with the Flash, but Pietro's pride swelled anyway. You fly, you're powerful, but speed might not be your thing. Run, and I'll try to catch you, Leon proposed, one hand on his hip. Let's race. Pietro's attention snagged on Leon's outfit. The uniform, crafted from rare materials, wasn't a skin-tight suit so much as armor, like something Batman might wear. Despite the angles, it showed every line of Leon's muscles. Did you change clothes? You look great, Pietro gushed, genuinely impressed. For a while, his world had been all revenge and bitterness. Now, with him and Wanda as guests of Tony and enrolled in college, that edge had softened. Pietro's restless, mischievous nature came back full force, and he couldn't resist reaching for Leon's chest. Leon slapped his hand away. Ow, that hurts! Pietro bared his teeth and shook his hand. Can I touch it just once? If you can beat me, then sure. Leon pursed his lips. Pietro hopped like a caged rabbit, legs spread, and tore off in a wild blur. The air around him shuddered and formed strong gusts. For more than 10 seconds he kept glancing at Leon. Leon hadn't moved. Confidence swelled in Pietro. Even if Superman was half an idol, beating him in speed felt incredible. Then he changed direction and rocketed toward Leon, leaving phantom images in his wake, grinning as he reached to touch the armor and hoping to catch a surprised look from Leon. As he looked up, though, he had the sudden, impossible impression that Leon's eyes were tracking him, that there was a playful light in them. Could Leon really keep up with him? It didn't make sense. Pietro's arm snapped back. Leon had caught his wrist with a powerful grip. An immense force wrapped around him and stopped him mid-stride. Got you, Leon teased. You lost, Pietro. To be honest, I preferred you when you were always frowning. Why? Pietro blurted. You were more composed then. Not so over the top, like that guy who always shows up in a red suit. Instead of letting go, Leon folded a biofield around Pietro. In an instant, they flashed away together and reappeared on a mountaintop tens of thousands of kilometers away, the horizon distant and Wanda barely visible. Wanda's over there, Leon said, pointing. That's my speed. They returned to where they'd been. Pietro stood motionless for a few seconds before his brain caught up. He stared at Leon, mouth opening and closing, stunned. What kind of speed was that? Was that teleportation? Leon clapped his younger brother on the shoulder. Light speed. Pietro went pale as a drained fish, jaw slack. Leon turned to Wanda. What about you? What's your ability? Wanda glanced at Pietro, who was still muttering to himself, and the mischief she'd planned to use on Leon faded. She'd thought to scare him with her new powers, but now she hesitated. I have telekinesis and maybe mind control. No, actually, I think it's the ability to create illusions. She fidgeted. I'm not totally sure. You can try it on me. Leon took a step closer when Wanda moved back. My mind is strong. I'll be fine. Are you sure? Wanda hesitated, then raised her hands. What kind of illusion should I make? One that scares me, Leon said. Make me afraid. Wanda stood on tiptoe and touched Leon's forehead with slender fingers. Scarlet energy flooded outward, but Leon felt nothing at first. You haven't started? He asked. Beads of sweat appeared on Wanda's brow. I'm trying my best. Leon realized why. His will and mental defenses were extraordinarily strong. A small tower protected his soul, guarding his inner core. It would be asking a lot for a novice to penetrate that. Try again. This time, Leon deliberately dropped his mental shields, including the little tower. Wanda pushed, and her illusion took hold. Leon's vision shifted. He floated above a dead Earth, every person gone, including Tony and Natasha. The planet was a furnace of fire and scarred land. When he landed, Tony's corpse opened its eyes and spoke. Leon, why did you take so long this time? The enemy was too strong. I'm sorry. I couldn't stop him. Familiar faces, Pepper, Shirley, Natasha, and her sister, the men in black, lay among the corpses and echoed the same words, asking why he had been gone so long. It was the scene Leon always feared returning to after a traversal. He stood among a field of dead friends and allies, listening to 100 mouths asking why. Chaos magic, as expected, he muttered under his breath. Wanda had only been tentatively channeling her power, barely applying it. and yet she had dug into the deepest part of his worry. If she trained, she could quickly surpass many of the archmages of Kamartaj. Leon took one last look at the dead and closed his eyes. When he opened them, Wanda watched him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "You actually broke free on your own," she said. "I wondered if you would. That was your deepest fear," she added. "But you're so strong. Why would you still have that worry? Strength is never enough." Leon shook his head. "Wanda, your ability is excellent. You're underestimating it. It's not just telekinesis or simple illusions. Its true form is a reality-altering power, magic." His mind moved inward, manipulating the materials of his inner world to begin constructing a villa. "Both you and Pietro have great potential," he told them. "But potential isn't the same as actual power. You'll train here with me for a while." He stopped and gave them one more important detail. "Time here flows 1,000 times faster than outside. We'll have plenty of it." Chapter 173. Pietro's eyes were filled with tears. When Leon and the two of them returned from the inner world, it was exactly the time they'd agreed to meet. But compared to before, their appearances had changed drastically. Leon was wearing a new combat suit. His brows and eyes were sharp, like a Spartan sharpening his blade before battle. Pietro and Wanda, however, were almost unrecognizable. Pietro's left cheek was swollen, both eyes bruised deep purple, and his hair was so tangled you wouldn't let a bird build a nest in it. His clothes were in tatters, and beneath them his skin showed scars of all depths. Wanda was a little better off, but still bore bruises and scrapes, and her long hair had been hacked into a rough, choppy style, chamade of sorts. Looking at them, you'd think they were castaways who'd survived alone on a desert island for months. Leon walked into the library with the two of them. Tony and the others were already there, gathered around Caecilius, who hung upside down in the air. Just as Leon stepped forward, Pietro suddenly let out a wail, part cry, part howl, and broke down. It was hard to imagine a handsome adult man crying so miserably, tears and snot streaming down his face. Yet Pietro sobbed like a child, and there was a strange mix of misery and relief to it, as if a great weight had finally been lifted. He flung his arms up toward the ceiling, tears running from the corners of his eyes into his collar, and cried out, "I'm really miserable." Tony twitched a corner of his mouth. For some reason, the scene made him think of the Shawshank Redemption, how the protagonist looked when he finally escaped prison. Pietro's crying set Wanda off too. She bit her lip and looked at Leon with an expression that was part hurt, part petulant cat. The others in the library stared. Tony glanced at Leon. "What's wrong with them, Leon? What did you do to them? We can't be too inhumane." He even added the little qualifying phrase, the implication being that a little inhumanity might be acceptable. Leon opened his mouth to explain, but Pietro wailed again. "When people are hurting, they don't care about being scolded. They want comfort." Tony's half-joking question unleashed Pietro's emotions like a dam breaking. He rushed forward, clung to Tony's leg, and smeared snot and tears down Tony's pants. "I'm so miserable. Leon, he's a monster, a monster!" Pietro shrieked. Tony's eyes widened, and he looked at Leon. Leon just spread his hands in a placating, innocent gesture. Tony bent down and asked Pietro, "What did he do to you?" "He helped us awaken our powers," Pietro said between sobs, and then he said my physical fitness was too poor, said I was the kind of guy who'd get shot dead even with super speed. Pietro wiped his nose. "So he injected Wanda and me with some SS1 enhancement serum." Tony blinked. "Doesn't that sound good? I worked on that serum. It helps the body evolve." "I was actually happy," Pietro sniffled, "but then he started special training for us." "What kind of special training?" Tony asked, suddenly curious. Pietro's face went even more stricken. "He tied me to a huge dog. The dog had meat dangling from its head and ran ahead. I had to dig with my bare hands behind it, digging as fast as it ran. If I couldn't keep up, I wouldn't get dinner." Tony, Banner, and the others stared. That sounded borderline barbaric. They looked at Leon. "It's to strengthen his control over his power," Leon said, hands open. "When he can dig quickly and in order in an emergency, his control improves. Besides, I'm a martial arts master. This method isn't out of line." A few people nodded slowly, as if seeing the logic in it. Pietro wasn't finished. "He tied me under a big tree, smeared me with honey, and threw a beehive at me from 10 meters up. Out came a swarm, dozens of centimeter-long bees that stung me. Dozens of centimeter-long bees? That sounded lethal. Eyes turned to Leon again. That trains evasion, Leon said calmly. He awakened super speed. Facing a swarm teaches him to dodge attacks. Tony and the others mulled it over and nodded again, apparently convinced. Pietro blinked in disbelief. Wait, that's reasonable? More, Pietro continued, voice rising. He threw me into a volcano, tied me to a giant rock, and activated the lava so I had to race it. He threw me into the sea with dozens of sharks over 100 meters long and made me escape from their mouths. Good heavens. Tony and the others stared daggers at Leon. He answered as if reading from a manual. That's to train continuous combat ability and survival in extreme environments. Oh, the others suddenly looked enlightened. Reasonable. Very reasonable. Pietro went slack. He stared at them, dumbfounded. You really think that's reasonable? Leon stepped forward, grabbed Pietro by the collar, and pulled him off Tony's leg. Do you only remember the hardships? He snapped. Don't you realize how much stronger you are now than when you first awakened? Pietro blinked. Stronger? When you first awakened, your ability would cut in and out. Now it doesn't, right? Leon continued. During training, you learned how to exert your power at high speed and how much force and speed you need to achieve certain effects. After training in volcanoes, oceans, high altitudes, abysses, even space, your survivability and adaptability have improved dramatically. Leon glanced at Wanda. Your sister went through similar training. Why isn't she as beaten up? He tapped Pietro's chest with the back of his hand. How can a man be so fragile, worse than your sister? Pietro froze, looking at Leon's broad back. For the first time, he wondered if he really had been too weak. He turned to Wanda. Is what he says true, Wanda? Did you go through those trainings too? Both siblings had been trained separately by Leon, so neither knew all the specifics of the other's regimen. Chapter 174, Prelude. Wanda's lips moved. After a few seconds, she glanced away, awkward. Almost, I guess. Leon had given Wanda some secret localized manuals on illusion and psychokinesis and let her study them on her own, checking in periodically and sparring with her using the same kinds of powers. After nearly 2 months, her progress had been enormous, but the process had been messy. Training left its marks. Her punk haircut, the bruises across her body, the scuffed sleeves, all signs of fighting Leon. A few minutes earlier, she'd still been sulking over his relentless attacks. Hearing Pietro's story, though, made her suddenly feel fortunate. Leon had actually been quite gentle. She smiled, a little guilty. Pietro, be strong, she encouraged. We both finished training and got stronger, didn't we? Pietro stared at Leon, doubt written all over his face. Could it be, I'm really just too fragile? Leon smiled. Everyone has moments of weakness. You were suppressed because you trained alone, no one to lean on, so it's normal to have feelings. Don't doubt yourself. So this is normal. Pietro looked at Leon, feeling foolish. Leon had trusted him, spent time training him, helped him develop his powers, and here he was, crying and complaining. Was he worthy of Leon's effort? He thought about it, then aggressively wiped his tears with his already torn sleeve. His eyes stayed red, but his resolve hardened. I understand, he said. Leon, don't worry. I'll use what I learned these 2 months to protect the Sanctum Sanctorum. Relief spread over Leon's face. Pietro, I was right about you. Then follow Wong to the Hong Kong temple and help out. The safety of Earth depends on you. Pietro leapt at the chance. Yes, he shouted, then stood beside Wong. Teenagers like Pietro were easy to sway. Tell them they're saving the world, protecting Earth, indispensable. And they'll charge into battle with swords, guns, and sticks, convinced their sacrifice will mean something. Leon knew that instinct well. He died in his previous life because he'd acted heroically. He also knew how to steady a young man's heart, and he'd poured himself into Pietro's training. In the movies, Pietro was a speedster who could be felled by a bullet, without rigorous training. Leon worried a stray clawed minion might stab him and hand away a kill to the enemy. Leon turned to Wanda. Wanda, you'll stay at the sanctum with Banner. Like Banner, go wherever things are worst among the 3 sanctums. Wanda nodded. After nearly 2 months of training, her increase in power felt almost unreal. When Leon faced her directly, he already had to use psychokinesis at a mid to late planetary level, a force measured in tens of thousands of tons. Wanda's strength came from chaos magic, Her physical power, after being injected with the SS-1 serum, remained at about 30 tons. In Leon's small team, aside from Wong and Mordo, anyone else could still overpower her if they got close. Wanda's chaos magic needed a starting gesture, more a mental habit than a true requirement, but that split-second motion was hard to overcome and long enough for enemies to act. "I understand," she said. She and Pietro had been brought in by Leon specifically to protect the sanctum. They'd been awakened, trained, and now they had to follow orders. Leon checked on the others. "Everyone ready?" Wong answered. "All 3 sanctums are prepared for war. We can begin the plan." "We'll hold back every attack, but Leon, be careful," Mordo warned. "I will." Leon walked toward Caecilius. "I'll take care of this guy, but something's still missing." "Oh, right," someone said. "Caecilius's escaped accomplices can't be left behind." Leon activated his super senses, vision and hearing at once, and quickly pinpointed the followers' locations. For a moment he blurred, and then 8 unconscious figures appeared on the ground. They wore uniform robes, their eye sockets marked with the same smoky dark dimension makeup as Caecilius's. "Were these the accomplices who attacked the London sanctum with Caecilius?" Leon asked Wong. Wong swept his gaze over them in surprise. "They're all here, plus 5 more." "Consider it a bonus," Leon said. He used psychokinesis to make the figures float beside him, grabbed Caecilius, and looked at everyone. "I'm going to say hello to Dormammu. Before I return, whether anything strange happens or not, be ready for war." He took the 9 prisoners to the world ring fixed where the original Eye of Agamotto had been and stepped through. Leon vanished. The library fell into a hush. Everyone's faces showed a mix of feelings: relief, apprehension, and a trace of awe. Pietro broke the silence. "Superman's power is really illogical." Heads turned. Pietro hurried to explain. "Think about it. Finding enemy accomplices like that would take Batman ages to figure out in a DC comic. But Leon just stood there, casually used his super sense and found them all. Then he moved that fast to bring them here. My power, super speed, isn't even as fast as his." Banner and the others laughed at Pietro's rambling. They'd all thought it. Leon was absurdly strong, borderline perverse. The worst part was he never stopped trying to get stronger. "All right, Superboys and one girl, no more small talk. Time to go guard our sanctums," Tony said. He'd been the most worried about Leon, but Pietro's interjection eased the tension and made Tony realize the truth. Leon was already beyond their comprehension. Worrying about him was pointless. Better to head to their own battlefields. Even facing dimensional demon gods, the title of Iron Man could not lose its shine. "Don't be careless, Tony," Wong and Mordo said, and each stepped into the portal to their sanctum. "Guys, if anything unexpected happens, alert me immediately." Banner called, flexing. "This time, I won't hesitate to let the Hulk out." "Received." Tony made an okay sign and disappeared into his portal. Wanda called to Pietro as he followed Wong. "Pietro, be careful. Warn me if there's danger." Don't worry, Pietro wiped his nose. "My training these 2 months wasn't for nothing. 10,000 enemies? I can handle them." Across countless parallel Marvel movie universes, the first war Kamar Taj was about to wage against a dimensional demon god teetered on the brink. Chapter 175, Caecilius's Sacrifice. The world inside the ring was immense, 0.1 light-years across. A single colossal continent floated at its center, thousands of kilometers wide, with numerous planets drifting in the void around it. Beyond that lay the vast, empty reaches of the universe. Originally, the small world had been entirely dark. Everything there could only be explored with mental projection. It wasn't until Leon placed a star within that the place gained light, though it remained desolate. Leon had brought 9 people and landed on a planet roughly Earth-sized. The colossal continent hovered overhead, exerting a subtle, terrifying gravitational pull far greater than Earth's. Leon used the world's power to generate breathable oxygen where they stood. Then he lifted the stupefy curse that had bound Caecilius. Caecilius's long braid trembled as he slowly opened his eyes. For a long moment, he took in his followers lying on the ground, pale but otherwise unharmed, then scanned the unfamiliar, barren landscape of swirling yellow sand. He saw Leon standing in the dust, immaculate. He had seen a photo of this man, Kamar Taj's new Sorcerer Supreme, and according to the sorcerer he had just killed, also called Superman. It didn't take much for Caecilius to understand that after being stunned by magic, he had been brought here and was under this Superman's control. Still, despite the disadvantage, Caecilius remained terrifyingly calm. He pushed himself up, looked up at the alien sky, took in the surroundings, and finally fixed his gaze on Leon. He showed no panic. "A strange dimension," he said. "You brought us here. Are you trying to exile us to another realm?" Caecilius flicked his wrist, and a translucent, illusory spatial spear formed out of nothing. "You are the new Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One's new disciple, Superman, yes?" Leon folded his arms. "Everything else is correct, but I'm not Ancient One's disciple." "You still mean to resist?" Caecilius asked, studying him as if searching for a weakness. For a moment, Caecilius's grim eyes paused. Then he dispelled the spear. He could draw power from the dark dimension, but going up against a being who could shrug off nuclear bombs was another matter entirely. Yet he felt no fear. The dark dimension's energy gave him an edge in manipulating space. He believed he held a trump card and that even Superman could not kill him. He paced 2 steps around Leon. "Superman, I have no intention of being your enemy, or Kamar Taj's." "Then why attack the London Sanctum?" Leon asked, cutting him off before the conversation could turn into a debate. "That wasn't an attack, it was salvation." Caecilius's voice was calm as he put his hands behind his back. "The Ancient One has lived for centuries, but her long life doesn't come from the Vishanti, it comes from the dark dimension," he explained steadily, as if lecturing. "The dark dimension transcends time, it never changes, it gathers countless worlds like Earth." "Superman," his eyes flared. "Life on Earth is too short, everything is fleeting, even the warm sun will one day die. But in the dark dimension, a life, tree, fish, ant, can become eternal. Earth will merge with other worlds and find a new way to survive." He spread his hands like he was embracing the whole cosmos. "Time is the enemy of all things. By transcending time, we transcend everything." Leon raised an eyebrow. "You call trying to kill everyone in the London Sanctum salvation? That is their salvation and liberation." Caecilius spoke without guilt. He truly believed it. Before eternity, all sacrifices are but dust in an endless universe. His eyes burned with conviction as if he expected Leon to be moved. "Join us, Superman. Your life deserves immortality in the dark dimension." Leon's face broke into an excited smile. He extended his hand and shook Caecilius's firmly. "I'm in. What do I do? Do we sacrifice Earth to the dark dimension?" "That's right. Once we return and destroy the 3 great sanctums, we can offer Earth to the great Dormammu." Caecilius was surprised at how smoothly the persuasion had worked. This Superman was ambitious, exactly the kind of ally he wanted, regardless of whether Leon's loyalty was sincere or feigned. If the leader of Kamartaj embraced the dark dimension, success would be inevitable. He almost spoke about returning to Earth immediately, but Leon surprised him by pointing at the floating continent above. "I have an idea," Leon said. "This dimension is unowned. Why don't we offer it to Dormammu first?" "Unowned?" Caecilius's eyes flared. "Are you certain?" "Yes," Leon said. "This is the Sorcerer Supreme's inherited dimension, the last line of defense against the dimensional demon god. If we offer it to Dormammu first, we'll be far more valuable when we reach the dark dimension." Caecilius probed him with more questions and inspected the world's mechanisms. At last, he slapped a hand to his thigh. Leon's plan was sound. Whether Leon was sincere or deceiving him didn't matter. If Dormammu descended and consumed this world, Leon's schemes would be irrelevant. Caecilius would be the one who offered it, the meritorious minister. "We need to cast the spell together," Caecilius decided. "Use our coordinates as a fuse to summon Dormammu to devour this world." He used dimensional energy to rouse his 8 followers and laid out a ritual circle in the barren plain. From a worn book, The Castle of Cagliostro, he took a page about worshipping Dormammu and placed it carefully on the ground. He even asked Leon to recite the opening incantation. Leon declined politely, so Caecilius began to pray himself. "In the name of loyal servants, as an offering from a place never before seen, let the great god become the only one." The 9 formed a circle and chanted the ritual words from the page in soft, measured tones. Leon stood outside the circle with his arms crossed, watching coldly. Then the air shifted. He felt it first, a vast, disquieting presence rushing in from beyond the small world. Dark dimension energy began to bleed through the world's membrane, slipping in like smoke through every crack. It thickened, sluggish and pervasive, filling the space as the approaching aura intensified. Chapter 176. Dormammu. Where is Strange? When the dark dimension's energies flooded the sky above the planet where they stood, space itself seemed to roll back like a curtain. Without a sound, a huge rent tore open in the air. The invisible fabric of reality looked shredded, and an endless flood of dark dimension energy poured through the breach. From the heavens to the ground, as far as the eye could see, there were sickly purples, blacks, and blood-red hues, an ominous, corrupting aura that radiated malice. It was like a tentacled tiger ripped from its cage, roaring at everything in sight. Those energies were lethal. Even a touch would corrupt ordinary people into monsters. Caecilius and the others, already hardened to contact with the dark dimension, merely grew more eager. They chanted their incantations faster, impatient to welcome their great master. Every syllable widened the rift, increasing the invasion of the small world. When they finished the last words, they intoned in low, reverent voices, "Great Dormammu." From the maw in the sky, a giant face emerged. Dormammu. His head alone was tens of meters high. His true form was fused with the dark dimension and rarely manifested unless necessary. "Who is it? It's you again." "Caecilius," he rumbled. Dormammu's presence carried a crushing oppression. His enormous eyes seemed to hold a universe, and a black hole pressure radiated from his gaze. No one dared speak loudly. Caecilius and his followers fell prostrate the instant Dormammu appeared, calling him Great Master. But Dormammu's attention swept across the small world, his gaze greedy and hungry. When he saw Caecilius among them, his composure cracked. "We're not even on Earth this time, and you're the one offering sacrifices?" His eyes grew sharp. "Where is the strange of this world? Why isn't he coming out?" On the ground, Leon's mouth twitched. Dormammu existed in countless parallel worlds. He wasn't unique, but the Lord of the Dark Dimension had been thwarted by many Doctor Stranges before. Seeing Caecilius made Dormammu reflexively think of Strange, like an animal remembering a painful bite. Caecilius and the others looked at one another, puzzled. Who was Strange? They had never heard the name. "Great Dormammu," Caecilius stammered, kneeling. "This world is unclaimed. I offer it to you. Let us and the Earth join the Dark Dimension." Dormammu ignored the petition, only interested in Doctor Strange. Until he found Strange, he felt as uneasy as if a fly had landed in his mouth. Although a small world 1,000,000,000,000 kilometers across was as attractive as Earth, that disgusting, meddling Strange had cost him countless conquests. "I don't know this Strange," Caecilius said hoarsely. "You don't know? How could you not know?" Dormammu's voice sank like a stone. Before he could grow angrier, Leon spoke calmly. "Of course he wouldn't know. Strange is still an ordinary man in this world." "An ordinary man? Not a sorcerer yet?" Dormammu blinked, then a terrible ease washed over him. "So this time I can devour this world without interference?" Dormammu's mood brightened. He regarded Leon as one of his followers by default. There were only a handful of living beings in this barren small world, and those willing to sacrifice a world surely could not include imposters. "You wish to join the Dark Dimension?" Dormammu asked, pleased and ready to grant their wish. Caecilius trembled. It was happening at last. After years of waiting, success was within reach. If he became one with the Dark Dimension, transcending time, he could resurrect his dead wife and son. "Yes, great Dormammu, that is what we pray for," he whispered, head bowed. "A good wish," Dormammu promised. "From now on, you will be part of the Dark Dimension and part of me." Those words sounded strange, but Caecilius and his followers were too ecstatic to notice any nuance. They prostrated themselves and murmured gratitude. Then, suddenly, the sigils on their foreheads flared. Crimson runes erupted, burning hotter and hotter like fresh blood. A torrent of dark energy gushed from the marks and engulfed the 9 of them. In a single breath, their bodies began to exude purplish-black tangible energy, their flesh blackened and corroded, piece by piece. What's happening? My flesh is melting," someone screamed. "My soul feels like it's burning. I can't take it," another shrieked. "It hurts. The Dark Dimension is devouring us," they cried in panic. In those final moments, the renegade sorcerers realized the truth. They had been deceived. Joining the Dark Dimension was nothing but becoming food for it. Eternal life meant becoming living components of Dormammu, sustaining him for the ages. No, this can't be. Caecilius's body cracked and fractured into tiny fragments that flew like sparks toward the rift. He knelt weakly as memories of his wife and son flickered through his mind, the images that had kept him going now slipping away. The castle of Cagliostro didn't write it this way, he mouthed, eyes hollow with refusal. Of course the page you read didn't tell you the price, Leon said quietly at his side. You have to read the whole book. Dark magic always lists the cost at the end. You knew this all along, Caecilius managed, only skull and wisps of flesh remaining. You knew. Even if I'd warned you, you wouldn't have believed it, Leon replied. I came for Dormammu. Please, don't let Dormammu invade Earth. You must stop him. I beg you. Caecilius's voice faded as his body disintegrated, swept into the dark dimension by the wind. Leon looked up at the immense head of Dormammu. I already said, I came for him, he repeated. Dormammu stared, puzzled that one person still stood and spoke fearlessly. You're not my follower? He boomed. Dormammu, Leon said, steady and calm. I'm here to negotiate. The name was enough. As soon as Leon spoke, it struck Dormammu like an old wound. Mentioning Doctor Strange sent a ripple through the great mind of the Dark Dimension Lord, a reflexive, furious reaction born of countless bitter defeats. Chapter 177. Without the Time Stone, how can you stop me? Negotiation? Dormammu froze. That word, how it grated on him. Every strange from every world always came with the same thing: negotiation, bargaining, begging. It was as if they only knew one response. Countless memories cascaded through Dormammu's mind, each strange burned into his recollection with painful clarity, down to the pores of his skin. For an entity like Dormammu, any past moment could be replayed with the fidelity of a high-definition recording. Every time Strange had said that, his smug, self-righteous face had made Dormammu sick. He did not want to remember it again. He had sworn he would one day crush every last Strange. So he refused to simply excise those repulsive images from his mind. And now this ordinary little pest beneath the biofield, Leon looked like any other man, had the gall to throw out that same word. He dared to remind Dormammu of that sewer maggot Strange. Rage flared. Dormammu's enormous, flame-like head erupted in a solid wash of purplish-red energy. The dark dimension's fire swirled around him, licking the sky, threatening to incinerate the world itself. No one could stand calm before that. Leon felt the pressure tighten in his chest. Within the dark dimension, Dormammu's power truly reached a universe-level magnitude. But Leon was not frightened. Everything was going according to plan. He even inwardly noted that Dormammu, at this moment, resembled that famous captain with a flaming skull. Negotiation. You dare say negotiation? Dormammu scoffed. You came to die. He struck without warning. Countless earthen spears erupted from the seams of the dark dimension, arcing toward Leon like javelins meant to pierce flesh. Leon reacted instantly. His hands traced a sigil and vast seraphim shields erupted around him. With dull impacts and sharp snaps, the spears shattered and clattered to the ground. Leon's cloak billowed. He drifted back on the breeze. Every movement readied him like a proper sorcerer. You are a sorcerer! Dormammu sounded surprised. Moments ago, he had detected no extraordinary aura on Leon. I am the sorcerer supreme of the earth of this small world. Leon formed another seal. Dormammu, leave. This is your last chance. Sorcerer supreme, another one. How arrogant. Dormammu snapped. Infinite energies gathered, coalescing into a beam several meters thick that lanced toward Leon. The beam's solidity and destructive intent felt heavier than anything Leon had felt even from his self-detonation. Luckily, when the beam crossed the boundary between the dark dimension and the small world, its potency dimmed. It still contained enough force to shatter a planet, but not the universe. Leon no longer relied on his own reserves. He linked to the Vishanti's dimension and called upon Hoggoth's ancient spell. The planet-shattering beam met that spell and unraveled into swarms of shimmering butterflies. Dormammu's attack continued to surge, but Hoggoth's binding kept neutralizing it, spawning more and more emerald butterflies until the sky filled with them. Damn it, how can you afford the cost of that magic for so long? Dormammu barked, finally halting the assault after a few furious minutes. Leon gave a cold chuckle. Give up, Dormammu. Your dimensional energy is depleted after crossing into this world. It's not enough to beat me. Dormammu ground his teeth. A mere sorcerer siphoning Vishanti's might if I step into this world myself. Even Strange couldn't sustain that spell forever, Leon said offhandedly. Dormammu's eyes darted, suspicious and sharp. Could it be you're using the Time Stone to restore yourself? Leon raised an eyebrow, playing along, then smiled. The Time Stone? Wasn't that destroyed by Thanos 5 years ago? Destroyed 5 years ago? You don't have the Time Stone. Dormammu's laughter filled the space. Haha, so your universe is already past the blip. No Time Stone, no loop. I like these strange worlds. With the stone gone, Dormammu need not fear the endless time loops Strange had used against him. Leon gave himself an invisible thumbs up for the performance. Dormammu had always missed the nuance. The dark dimension didn't experience time the way other realms did. At first, when he met Doctor Strange, Dormammu couldn't even comprehend what time meant. There was no passage of time to him. The Time Stone in the dark dimension should be inert. Yet whenever Strange stood at the threshold between Earth and the dark dimension, the passage allowed Earth's concept of time to leak in, and the Time Stone's power could take hold. Dormammu had once believed Strange trapped him with time. Later, after encountering many Stranges from parallel worlds, he learned the loop only affected Strange and his Earth. Dormammu could have left whenever he wished. After so many wasted confrontations, he had learned to turn away whenever he saw Caecilius sacrifice himself while Strange stood ready. It was just bad luck that Strange was there. Now at last, Dormammu confronted a world without the Time Stone. The thought delighted him. Strange hasn't become a real sorcerer here, and the blip happened. Another strange world with no stone, Dormammu taunted. With the stone destroyed, how do you stop me, Sorcerer Supreme? Leon locked his hands and did not flinch. So what if it's gone? Even without the Time Stone, I can stop you. 2 Vishanti sacred swords appeared in his grasp, then multiplied until the sky teemed with them, a locust-like swarm surging toward Dormammu. He inhaled and unleashed another crushing energy beam that cleaved through the sword shadows, shredding them to nothing. You have some tricks, Dormammu admitted. Among the strangers I've met, few can do this. His gaze sharpened, bearing his ancient hunger. But you're naive if you think you can actually stop me. Then 2 colossal hands tore through the spatial fabric like cloth, ripping a wider breach. Dormammu's massive form pushed through the gap, dimensional energies trailing in his wake. He stepped across the threshold, gripping the torn edges of space, and emerged wholly into the small world. As he detached from his dimension-integrated state, his aura plunged. From a universe-level behemoth, he fell to a Skyfather-level power, still devastating, but far diminished compared to when he was fused with the dark dimension. Still, by stepping into this world's dimension, he had unbound himself from the dark dimension's constraints and could now deploy all his combat methods here. In this realm, his repertoire made him more dangerous in different ways. Now, how will you stop me? Dormammu sneered, looming over the tiny figure of Leon. Leon looked up calm and certain. He smiled, and that smile revealed his true intentions. Why stop you? Welcome to my world, Dormammu. Chapter 178, It's My Turn. Dormammu watched Leon's confident expression, and memories of Doctor Strange hit him like a flare. Strange had always worn that same look when bargaining with him. He scanned the battlefield, searching for any hidden trump cards. His suspicion grew, but found nothing. This Sorcerer Supreme seemed like an arrogant frog in a well. Dormammu's gaze turned cold. Welcome? Then offer this world and earth to me, Sorcerer Supreme. Leon formed hand seals. This world is mine, and earth is under my protection. If you want it, come and try. A mirror dimension blossomed outward, swallowing the entire planet in a breath. Dormammu sneered. Mirror dimension? How ridiculous. Then I'll have to kill you and devour everything you own myself, he thundered, and attacked. Dimensional energy roared from Dormammu, ripping the mirror dimension apart like a pane of glass. Space itself tore open, and a fist the size of a small mountain lunged at Leon. It was raw, direct close combat, the simplest, most devastating force Dormammu could muster. The blow struck Leon and sent him careening like a meteor, smashing through one mountain after another. Collapsing ranges threw up clouds of dust that turned the sky dark for kilometers. From orbit, the planet's surface looked as if a row of brown scars had been drawn across it. A mere Sorcerer Supreme, Without the time stone, and still you bluster, Dormammu taunted. He pushed both hands forward and bent the elements to his will. The winds, rains, thunder, lightning, earthquakes, fires, and tides surged toward Leon. Landslides, fissures, tsunamis, storms, and meteor-like strikes converged in a cataclysmic assault. Any one of those assaults could have wiped out life. Now they were all focused on a single target. Dormammu vented his fury, every slight, every memory of Strange, on this one Sorcerer Supreme, determined to pulverize him. When the tumult subsided, the planet's surface was pocked with craters. Where Leon had stood, an unfathomable abyss yawned, seawater pouring into its maw. Even the Ancient One, Dormammu thought, would likely have perished under such a barrage. He strode to the rim and scanned the void. There was no sign of life. Strange, he muttered, thinking of his real quarry. One day you will be devoured by me along with this earth, just like this Sorcerer Supreme. He turned as if to leave, planning to take to the void and begin devouring the small world, when a voice came from behind him. Oi, where are you going? Dormammu froze and spun. You're not dead! Leon rose from the abyss, completely unscathed. His battlesuit was intact, his hair not even mussed. Your attacks were only ticklish. If you want to finish me, you'll have to try harder. He clenched his right fist, and a brilliant blue field surged out, spreading around the world like living light. You want to leave just as it's my turn? Not on my watch. Dormammu's brow tightened. The parts of space the Dark Dimension had assimilated began snapping back into place. Portals erased themselves like chalk washed from a board. Worse, Dormammu discovered his tether to the Dark Dimension had been severed. His ability to continue the invasion, or even to return, was gone. Flames licked higher on his crown. He swept his gaze across the planet and found everything wrapped inside that blue energy field. It tasted of space manipulation, an exquisitely profound barrier he could not penetrate. He could shred a mirror dimension with ease, but this isolation resisted him. His best option was obvious: kill the source. Kill Leon. Do you even need to ask? Leon's voice was calm. Of course I'm cutting off your retreat, Dormammu. You're a bird in a cage. He floated, palms open, no hand seals, no grand gestures, just a changing posture and an unwavering glare. Dormammu roared and brought his mountain-sized fist down like a falling world. To him, Leon was an ant beneath a mountain. The fist slammed forward, but it struck as if against another mountain and stopped dead. It was like a rhino plowing into a wall of titanium, enormous force rendered useless. Leon extended a palm and blocked the punch with effortless grace, not even shifting. What? Dormammu spat. This is impossible. Nothing is impossible. Your fist has no power when I stop it, Leon said as he withdrew his hand and folded his arms. Flames surged. Dormammu flexed condensed dimensional energy and unleashed blow after blow, hooks, straights, uppercuts, raking strikes with planet-shattering force. Each hit thundered through the air with aftershocks that gouged mountains and toppled rivers. Yet Leon's expression never changed. He did not budge. Every strike vanished against him as if it met vibranium or Uru itself. Dormammu pounded until his fists ached and the world around them bore the marks. He stepped back, baffled. How can a sorcerer have such a body? He snarled. Years as a Dimension Lord had taught him many wonders, but never a sorcerer with this kind of physical resilience. Leon smiled. Is one still a sorcerer if he ignores close combat? Now, it's my turn. He raised his own fist. His body seemed to swell, the motion of his charge appearing almost instantaneous, and suddenly he was beside Dormammu's vast head, an infinitesimal fist against a giant face. And yet, when Leon's punch connected with Dormammu's temple, the entire fiery head pitched backward like a meteor ripped from the sky. It slammed into the ground with a keening cry, bounced and shattered continents, a thunderous collapse that scarred more than 1,000 kilometers and threw dust into the heavens. Dormammu howled in pain as his body crumpled. Leon hovered, cape snapping in the wind, his biofield deactivated. He tore through the air with a sonic boom, clouds and rain spiraling around him, and charged at the fallen Dimension Lord. Chapter 179, Star Explosion. Inside the collapsed mountain, Dormammu struggled to rise. Leon's fist found him again, slamming into his face. Boom! Dormammu's head, which had just lifted, crashed back into the rock layers, sinking thousands of meters. An invisible shockwave radiated outward as the blow struck his flaming skull. The surrounding ground peeled away layer by layer from the impact. The continental shelf trembled, the ocean rolled back. The world seemed to revert to the primordial tumult of creation. Amid Dormammu's wails, Leon planted his foot on the enormous face and rained down rhythmic blows. Each punch roared across the world. Each strike drove Dormammu plummeting thousands of meters toward the planet's core. Thump! Thump! The heavy thuds rolled like thunder, accompanying Dormammu's cries. Together they fell, Dormammu's bulk smashing through crust and mantle. Pulverized rock sprayed Leon like droplets from a fountain. He did not flinch. His face was cold, and a fierce joy flashed in his eyes. Since transmigrating, he had never enjoyed a fight like this. Dormammu, with his immortal attribute, made the perfect punching bag. They fell ever closer to the core. The temperature rose. After one more punch, Leon drew his hand back, gathered himself, and law energies coalesced around his arm. The next moment, he launched a full-force blow, his speed approaching the speed of light. If the previous strikes had been relentless, brutal battering, this was the serious punch. 10 quadrillion tons of force propelled at light speed. For an instant, everything else seemed to halt. Time stretched and sounds fled. Air and rubble hung suspended like a frozen ink wash painting, too beautiful for the moment. Then that stillness was shredded. In the void of space, a point of light flared and rapidly expanded. The planet where Leon and Dormammu stood detonated. There was no sound in the cosmic silence, only all-consuming, incomparable fire. The world shattered from within, breaking into evenly sized fragments and hurling them outward. The scene was terrible and sublime, like an eternal panorama from myth. Through the blaze, a shadow lunged free, Leon and Dormammu. Dormammu's head lolled, his limbs drifting weakly as they rode the explosion. Leon was still punching. Each blow carried the force to destroy a planet. Dormammu's flaming head had ballooned grotesquely, but Leon would not stop. Under the relentless impact, Leon and the immolated god body he rode fell into a continent tens of millions of kilometers wide. Thump! As they struck, shockwaves stirred dust across the sky and sound returned, the familiar thudding as if someone pounded on a massive drum. Only when Dormammu was driven deep into the ground, forming a bottomless chasm, did Leon finally stop. He drew a long breath, full of exhilaration, like a bodybuilder finishing a set. In the abyss, Dormammu lay with his head down and legs up, barely conscious. But this was only temporary. As an energy life form, he could recover quickly when supplied with energy. To truly kill him would require draining or exhausting all his power. Seconds after Leon's assault ceased, Dormammu's swollen skull began to deflate. Dormammu has conceptual immortality, Leon observed while hovering above the abyss. As long as someone believes in him, he can be reborn endlessly. So directly killing him here is not cost-effective, he continued, analyzing. Better to beat him down, then coerce and leverage him. Minutes later, Dormammu, fully recovered, hauled himself out of the chasm like a Tarzan. He had been stunned enough to forget his magic, climbing the cliff with bare hands like any mortal. He still burned, but his arrogance was gone. He looked at Leon and, in a tone humbled yet still veiled with disdain, said, "Sorcerer Supreme, state your terms." Dormammu's voice had softened, lacking the previous overbearing bite. This was different from the time Strange forced him to parley with the Time Stone. That had been a threat, brandished like a nuclear button. This time he had been beaten into submission. Dormammu had never seen anyone who relied purely on physical power to wield god-tier force. Most great beings, Odin, the Celestials, drew energy from beyond themselves. Leon's raw strength earned Dormammu's reluctant respect. As long as the terms were reasonable, he might accept them. Leon spoke without ceremony. "I want half the authority of the Dark Dimension." Dormammu fell silent for a few seconds, as if he had misheard. "What did you say?" "I want the authority of the Dark Dimension," Leon shrugged. "Don't take it so hard. If half is unacceptable, we can bargain." Even 1% would be a huge gain for Dormammu, but he was not stupid. Fire flared on his head anew. "Are you mocking me? Offer your soul to the universe, or I will strike you down." "Nothing to discuss?" Leon asked blandly. "Half not okay? How about a quarter?" He spread his hands, offering compromise. That was the last straw. Dormammu roared and attacked again, recently hypersensitive to questions of dimensional authority. "Shut up!" he thundered, weaving both hands through space. Immense dimensional energy snatched a planet and hurled it toward Leon. Angry? Leon shot back with a smirk. He drew on space stone power, seized another planet, and smashed it toward Dormammu. The flames of war burst anew as planets became missiles between them. Elsewhere, after Leon entered the World Ring, the Kamartaj sorcerers had taken their positions. Defense teams stood ready, attack teams aligned, control and support units in place. The three sanctums and the holy sites across the Himalayas were on high alert. In the London sanctum, Mordo, Daniel, and Grandmaster Hamir coordinated the sorcerers' duties. At the Hong Kong temple, Wong and Pietro bantered as Pietro thumped his chest and insisted he had everything under control. In the New York sanctum, Tony Stark gathered the men in black stationed in the city. Following Leon's orders, he distributed magical artifacts, simple ones that ordinary people could use in the sanctum, to those agents, preparing for whatever came next. Chapter 180, Dimension Invasion. Inside the Kamartaj sanctum, Banner and Wanda stood guard before the teleportation portals of the three sanctums, muscles tight with tension. 3 light screens blinked open in front of them, each showing the situation where Tony and the others were. Outside the library, the emergency aid sorcerers had already lined up, staffs in hand, ready to step onto the battlefield at a moment's notice. They really were staffs. The sorcerers left in the sanctum had taken the new bloodline potions and practiced a hybrid of arcane and mystic arts. Some of them had cat ears and tails, others had bony, ink-black wings sprouting from their backs. None of them looked particularly ordinary. The new magic system had been publicly taught for over half a month, yet few sorcerers had been willing to learn it. Drinking a bloodline potion changed you. Many ordinary people didn't want to become beast-like, but the advantage was undeniable. The new system allowed spellcasting without cost. It was only a matter of time before more sorcerers joined. Those standing there now were not ordinary anyway. When they learned of the side effects, they didn't balk. Some even took it as a bonus. Banner and Mordo found their enthusiasm baffling until Tony patiently explained a certain psychological inclination known as a furry fetish. After that, the pair finally understood why so many had embraced animalistic transformations. The strangest of them all was Lintla. Originally a minotaur, Lintla had accidentally come to Earth and found his way into Kamartaj to become a sorcerer. He'd been the first to drink a potion brewed from the blood of an invisible beast. Now his fur was thick and he could briefly turn invisible, an odd echo of his original nature. Simple-minded Lintla didn't overthink any of it. He was just happy that, after the new system was introduced, more companions in the sanctum looked like him. Time passed in taut waiting. No one could stay alert forever. Unlike Leon, who was fighting Dormammu in the World Ring with unflagging energy, most of the sorcerers found the silence draining. Half an hour later, Tony and the others decided to keep a portion of sorcerers on rotating alert. Meanwhile, in the Dark Dimension, several Hell Lords and dimensional demon gods noticed an anomaly. On a blood-red throne somewhere in Hell, Mephisto opened his eyes, then stepped down from his seat and gradually shifted into the guise of an old white-haired man. Dormammu's distracted, fighting someone. An Earth may be involved, Mephisto said, his grin revealing teeth like knives. This is too good to ignore. He didn't keep it to himself. Satanish, Zathanos, Marduk, the Eye Demon, and others turned their attention to Earth. Without consulting each other, they reached the same conclusion: send low-level hellspawn and dimensional creatures to probe and, if possible, thin the sanctum's defenses while they went to investigate the Dark Dimension for any opportunities while the Master was away. Red alarm lights began to flash across every projection screen. Sirens wailed, tinting the sanctum in bloody light. Tony's pupils narrowed as the warning strobed across his face. The enemy's here. All sorcerers, lock down the perimeter. Natasha, you and I will hit after the first wave of probes. No problem. Natasha tightened her grip on a magically reinforced spear. A few months ago, she never would have imagined life like this, resisting an invasion from another world, but here she was. Across the three sanctums, the defensive lattice was torn by raw dimensional energy. Small rifts opened. At almost the same instant, low-level hell and dimensional creatures poured through all three sanctums' breaches. Wong and Mordo detected the intrusions and issued the same command as Tony. The sorcerers in charge of sealing the area wove the mirror dimension around the sanctums, folding the new passages inside the mirrored space. Tony opened a full-frequency channel. "Everyone, strange creatures have appeared on my side. Three-headed hellhounds, red dragons from fairy tales. What's your status?" Wong's reply made Tony's jaw tighten. "Not good here. Large-eyed octopi, something from the eye demon's extra dimension." Mordo's voice came in next, sweat audible in his tone. "I've got hell demons, low level, but in numbers." The Hong Kong temple Wong guarded fared a little better. "Do we need to send aid?" Banner asked. "I can." "No, hold the Hulk." As Wong had read more grimoires than most and made the call. "Banner, split the remaining sorcerers into 3 teams. Focus your attacks, then move in for close combat." "On it!" Banner bolted from the library and marshaled over 100 field sorcerers into 3 teams, sending them through the teleportation portals to the 3 sanctums. Lintla's squad arrived at the London sanctum. The moment they stepped through, the mirror dimension folded around them and a new battlefield opened. Master Mordo led a desperate fight, his chains straining as he tried to hold 7 or 8 massive, octopus-like monsters. Each had tentacles over 10 meters long and a single enormous eye perched atop its bulbous head. One glance from that eye left Lintla and the others dizzy and disoriented. "Not good. Mental corrosive attack. Use Vishanti's mind guard," someone shouted. Dozens of sorcerers linked briefly with Vishanti's dimension to reinforce their minds, then crowded around Mordo. "Master Mordo, how do we deal with them?" "Unforgivable curses. Focus your fire on one target," Mordo barked, a vein throbbing at his temple. "They're extra-dimensional and resist physical force. You have to hit them with similar mental-level magic." They all agreed and drew their wands. Avada Kedavra. Green beams of killing intent converged on a single giant octopus. The spell required a resolute will to kill. The concentrated killing intent forced the creature's great eye to roll back, and it collapsed with a thud. The curse didn't physically destroy it. These beings could shrug off conventional harm, but the emotional assault shut it down long enough. Mordo's face lit. He released the chain, launched with his levitation boots, and cast the Fan of Ashtar. From above he descended, the fan cleaving through the stunned creature's head, splitting it cleanly in 2. "Good. Keep it up," Mordo shouted. Hogwarts magics, he hadn't expected to need them, but the Avada Kedavra barrage made the difference. Normally, the octopi strengthen themselves with dimensional energy when conscious, rendering them nearly invulnerable, while their continuous mental erosion made attack difficult. The coordinated curses neutralized them. Within minutes, Mordo and the sorcerers cut through the wave like a scythe through wheat. Mordo allowed himself a brief, relieved smile. "Looks like we're first to clear our side." "Master Mordo, look!" Lintla roared, pointing past them. Mordo spun. More rifts had torn open farther back, and from them poured another surge of enormous octopi. Their numbers were swelling, far too many for the first wave to be the whole attack. "Damn it," Mordo cursed, drenched in sweat. "Is the dimensional demon god on the other side insane? Sending this many minions?